Good evening and welcome to the May 2nd, 2016 Long Meadow Select Board meeting. We'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start with announcements. Any Select Board members have announcements tonight?
Well, just a short reminder, quick reminder for folks who are on boards and committees that we are going to have a little gathering in the school cafeteria on the 10th, just before the town meeting. And I've heard from a number of people. If I could hear from a few more, I'd know exactly how much pizza to get. But and then the other thing is that we had we're going to put together posters, and so folks will be have gotten a hard copy information sheet, and if they could just jot down a few things, and then we will have those put together. Well, not we. I could just say Stephen and Deb will put together, and we'll have posters for the about between 5 and 5:30 in the cafeteria right outside the town meeting. So,
okay. I had about three things real quick. I'd like to thank Bay Path University for putting on a fantastic women's conference this last Friday. It was absolutely exceptional speakers. It was phenomenal to have attended it. This Saturday, we dedicated the Blinn tennis courts. We had a fairly decent outpouring of people that come up. Gave Jim Russell a special plaque from the Select Board, recognition of all of his efforts towards keeping that project alive over the years. I think we set up there, it started in 2011 and it was just finished. So it went through many different phases before it was finally completed. And I'd like to thank Tom. Tom mentioned a pizza party. This is an initiative that Tom started on his own, where it was one of his goals this year to set up and bring all the committees together in a public place, ideally at the town meeting just prior, and have them available if any of the citizens of our community would like to ask them questions. It's the first time it's ever been done. It's a pretty neat idea. I've heard some very positive replies from people thanking Tom for doing it, so I thought we'd publicly thank him before the event takes place. Okay. Any other, Marie, do you have any comments? Any other ones? Okay. Resident comments? Yeah. 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 Is there an extra third sheet down there, guys?
Yeah, we can share these.
Okay. When you're ready, Richard, go ahead.
All right. Richard Elias, 608 Frank Smith Road, members of the Select Board, citizens of the Long Meadow. And I thought I said all I was going to say last meeting, but sometimes when something just kind of sticks in your back of your mind and you want to know why, you start doing some research. My professors at Western New England College would probably think I didn't listen to that part of their presentation, where it says we don't expect you to know answers for everything, but if you see something that's out of place, find out what it is and have something taken care of on it. At a meeting, I asked the school committee why they went after 2 meetings were rejected for having the all-day kindergarten. Did they put down it had to be on the ballot tonight? Well, I think I found the answer to that. It says here, school committee meeting on February 22nd, 2016. 4 positions for kindergarten level entrance were approved. When I asked them that question, their answer was, we needed that to help us with a Common Core. When they were coming up with a Common Core, I asked questions why they were doing that.
because the Common Core is supposed to have children that are not doing the best in school to raise them up to an acceptable level. It was my understanding that in Long Meadow, they try to take every child and bring him up to his maximum potential. And they said, oh yes, we're doing that. So it looks like to me they're running two separate systems. One that we don't need, the Common Core, which may be knocked out in the election coming up, because I believe it's on the ballot, or a change in the Washington politics. I don't know. But these are things that bother me. They said here on the thing that they spend $24,930 average per student. And they have a budget of $73,618,000 to work the school department. I don't know where they're getting that figure, but it seems a little bit high from what I'm thinking, unless there's monies from other areas coming in there that they're including. These children are coming in from other school systems that they're offering these children. The state does pay us a stipend to help defer the cost of these children coming into our things because it's better for them, which is great. I have no problem with that. But we're taking in 4 children. Almost $100,000 is going to be put into the school budget to cover those children. And the money that comes into the town is not used for that. When I looked at the material that the state provided, the purpose of letting the children come in and paying the towns was not to set up a slush fund, which I understand right now is between $200,000 and $300,000, that they didn't think was appropriate to touch that to help pay for the budget this year. So when they put that money in there, they're asking the citizens of this town to subsidize totally almost $100,000 for every 4 children in the year. It doesn't seem right. I'm not going to say that the people in the school committee are doing anything wrong. I don't think they are, as far as they're concerned. Their primary purpose is that they want to get what they think is the best education for the children. I can't fault them for that. But when they're making the taxpayers pay for things that they don't have to because they're not putting the money in to pay for what has been given to them by the state, there's something very wrong with that. And I don't think that was the purpose that the state was giving it, to give them a slush fund. Well, our taxpayers have to pay the full load for non-resident children. Thank you very much.
Okay, Roger, thank you. Select board comments. Mark?
I just have one comment. I've been reading with concern about what's going on with the mosquito-borne illnesses and the fact that our neighbors, East Longmeadow, did some spraying for mosquitoes, and you hear more and more people who are concerned about it. I'd just like to get perhaps a sense of the board, if there's any kind of consensus that we ask our Board of Health to come back with a report for us on what if they have talked about it, what their plans might be to address mosquito-borne illnesses coming this season. We do have ponds in the town and other things, and I think it might be worth letting the people hear what the Board of Health's actions or plans are. I don't presume that we're going to take that up, but I think.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're right. East Longmeadow is actively spraying all their open waters right now.
I just think that what the concern is, if others on the board are interested, that we would ask officially for a report from the Board of Health.
I can tell you that I'm pretty sure they have. Beverly Hirschhorn has reported that in her staff meetings. And I know they have a course of action that they've chosen. I don't know in detail what it is or why, but I know that they have met, discussed, and chosen a course of action.
I'm sure they have. That's why I'm just looking.
Yeah, no, you're right. It probably merits a report. I know part of the thing is working on, and I know that we're doing some research on this right now, either training DPW personnel or having a contractor come in and do the larvicide in our storm drains. So it has been active discussion, but a report on that, standalone report, is reasonable, given the interest in it. Okay. Sure, happy to do that.
Okay, thanks for bringing it up. Any other comments by Select Board?
I guess this has to do with the upcoming town meeting. Recently, there was a letter to the editor by Longmeadow's Citizens for Liberty about the gun control bylaws that I've proposed. And I guess one of the things I was struck by was how much of it was about me personally. And one thing that I've learned in the courtroom is that when the other side starts making things personal, that's about the time they've lost the argument, because they don't want to discuss the merits of the question, so they try to create a distraction by making it personal. And I think voters ought to ask themselves why they want to create that distraction. And I would also note that it's too bad that the tone was what it was, because the letter writer, Mr. Lamont, came to a select board meeting a little over a month ago, and he waited throughout the whole meeting. He wanted to speak to me afterwards. He and I spoke. It was probably 11 o'clock at night. It was cold outside, but we had a nice discussion, actually. He was very cordial. I think it was a polite discussion. I remember thanking him specifically that it was such a respectful dialogue. I'm not sure we changed each other's minds, but I think he understood my perspective, and I think I understood his. But in the meantime, these groups, Gun Owners Action League from Eastern Mass and the NRA have gotten involved. But I still think it's possible to have a respectful conversation about these issues on the merits. And I think that can happen next week.
Marie, can you make it quick? We've got to start a hearing in about a minute and a half.
That's right.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's right. I'll discuss it later.
Okay. Clarification for people out in TV land. I know Alex, under select board comments, referenced the citizens petition. I just want to make sure everybody's aware they are actually citizens petitions and were not brought forward from the select board. Stephen, I don't think there's a problem with starting 1 minute early. Do you?
No.
Okay, I'd take a motion to enter into a public hearing on the hazardous mitigation plan.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Okay, our hearing's open. And then you and I chatted a little bit about this today.
If there's folks who want to make public comment about it,
Mhm.
we can talk about it, or we can. I know someone from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission is planning to be here around 8 o'clock, who was instrumental in drafting the hazard mitigation plan and can speak to it a lot more proficiently than I can.
Right, well, this is a public comment session. I think
Yeah.
you and I discussed it.
It's for FEMA approval.
Right.
You need to have a public hearing.
Right. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the hazardous mitigation plan that we have up for review tonight?
It's hazard mitigation. It's not like chemicals. It's
No.
natural disaster type
No,
things.
yeah, it's a public hearing for, it's our master plan on how we
Yeah.
treat emergencies. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I took the time this weekend, and it was quite some time, to read through that, and a couple of things that, and I don't know if but it states that on page 51, it has some
It's no
issues.
discussion until the agenda item.
Yeah, we'll have it on the agenda.
That's the approval is the last agenda item, and I'd rather get the discussion of the details when the person who is really the facilitator of the report is here. So the hearing is for public comment. I mean, you can certainly make a public comment about it, but I think if you have a question about it, why don't we wait till we have the right person here to answer the questions?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of public comments we're looking for. I mean,
It's a requirement to have a public hearing.
well, I understand that, but I mean, was this made public other than on our website in preparation for? Was there?
I honestly don't know if Pioneer Valley. We were just told to put it on the agenda and have a public hearing.
Right, but I'm just wondering, was it publicized that people could come? I mean, this is a, I don't remember what it was, but it was an 80 something, 100 page, yeah, 104 page document that obviously a lot of people spend a lot of time on.
And a fairly standard plan. I think we mentioned that several months ago. This is a fairly standard preparation document the communities produce.
The town has been working on this, and it's been in reference in select board packets. I think they've had public meetings since like 2012, so it's been it's had a long gestation,
Most of the people that started this plan are retired. I think
Yeah, when
there's
you look at
only
the,
one
when you look at
person.
the hazard mitigation planning committee, I don't think any of them are still with the town.
one,
so.
one
You know,
person.
Walter.
Yeah, Walter John,
yeah,
yeah.
God bless Walt. Yeah.
He survived.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
so if there's no other public comments, I have to take a motion to close the hearing.
I'll move we close the hearing.
All in favor? Okay, hearing's closed. We'll come back to it. That's going to be an issue farther down in our agenda. Town manager, or excuse me, you want to slip the moderator first? Or you want to do your town manager one?
Just have respect for the moderator's time. We can.
Why don't you come on up?
Do we have an interview for?
Oh, excuse me. Shoot, let me get one interview. I'm sorry. Mrs. Martin, do you want to come up to the desk, please? Thank you, Mark. I had slipped right over. We should have done it. Well, we jump schedule to get the public hearing done. Yes, ma'am. And if you could please give us your name and your address for the record.
My name is Andrea Martin. I live at 84 Willowbrook Road in Long Meadow.
Okay. And you are applying for the Adult Center Task Force, Select Board Task Force.
That's right.
If you'd like, go ahead and just tell us why you'd like to be on it and maybe any special skills you bring or
Okay.
kind of.
Well, first of all, I'm a senior,
Mhm.
so that's important. And I'm also a neighbor. I live on Willowbrook Road, which is just a few blocks away from Turner Park, which I know is one of the sites that has been explored.
Mhm.
So that matters to me. My husband is a pickleball player, and he goes from town to play pickleball and comes home disappointed with our senior center and says, gee, we really need a new one. So I've been hearing that at home. We are business owners. We've been in town for over 40 years. And we both have fairly extensive experience in residential housing. We have built condos. We do a lot of development. And I'm a property manager of a 40-unit apartment complex. So property management is what I do every day. So I'm interested in building.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's about it.
Select Board?
Any questions?
I bet it's interesting evening conversations on the pickleball. They're quite animated about their sport.
It's the fastest growing sport in the United States,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, it's
great.
Richard, I think Alex has his hand.
Yeah, Al?
Do you have a view about where the senior center should be?
No, I don't actually. I think Turner Park is absolutely beautiful. I'd love to see it developed in some way that's best for the town. And I really, really feel that our senior center needs help. And it really does pale in comparison to the other ones we've been to. So no, my mind is open. I love Turner Park. I think that's a lovely place and it would work, but no, I don't know.
Everything, Tom?
No, thanks for coming.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other
Anybody
comments?
else?
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. We'll be making the announcement in 2 weeks on the committee.
Thank you.
Richard, is it appropriate to just comment about and it was appended to our documents tonight, the letter I sent about.
I was going to bring it up later.
Okay.
We'll get into it, okay?
All right. Yep.
And if I forget, please remind me because I do plan on getting it out. Town manager report.
Go to the moderator first, or I can do quickly. I'll do my thing quickly.
Mine was real quick.
Real quick. It's just it's going to be, as I note on our town's Facebook page today, it's that wonderful time of year where road construction projects are going to be starting in earnest. Our big projects kick off tomorrow. The final stage of both the Hazardville and Knollwood sewer projects is the resurfacing of the roads. It's starting in Hazardville tomorrow, about 7 a.m. for the milling. Weather is spotty this week, so progress will be dictated by the rain. I was watching the forecast before I came here, and they'll be dodging raindrops for the project. And then they will move on to Knollwood. One of the issues we have going in the town right now is led by Fire Chief John Dearborn, is switching over from our what some people call reverse 911 or outreach system. Right now it's Blackboard Connect. It's been Blackboard Connect for several years. Our new web vendor, Civics Plus, has their own version of that, and it has many advantages over Blackboard Connect. So we're in the process of working through a transition to that, which will. So come July 1st, we'll be using Civic Ready. Most people at home won't know the difference, but it is a substantial amount of work to get all the data to migrate, as we discovered with the website transition. During Long Meadow Days, there will be an opportunity to update your contact information and sign up either on paper or on laptop. We're still working through the logistics for Civic Ready. And I think one of the things we want to really encourage more use of is text messaging service, so people can get more regular communication from the town that isn't a phone call. Street construction information or delays in garbage service and things like that, non-emergency information. Even if it's just check out the town website for updated information on something, a text message isn't that big a deal versus people getting disrupted by a phone call. Mm-hmm. So it's got a lot more potential. We're really trying to explore that. So that's a big effort that's underway, and we'll have more reports on that as we get going. Also at Long Meadow Days, the town administration, if you will have a table. There'll be various department heads there to talk about, I think all of them can talk generally about town projects and the budget and kind of general to things, but they'll also be able to talk about their own agency. So if you're going to Long Meadow Days, be sure to stop by the town's booth if you have questions for town officials. There was a public hearing last week for Converse Street TIP project. It was not really that well attended, but got some good information out to the public, and we received some positive feedback from Mass DOT about the progress we've made on getting that project ready for construction. We'll talk about it a little more as we go through the special town meeting warrant. And this time you took the thing that I was going to say. I was going to note the tennis court dedication was a nice ceremony, well attended, and the project is really a highlight for the community.
This is the first time I get to see it.
Yeah.
I used to get all the good points.
Yeah.
Anything else, Stephen?
That's it for now.
The Long Meadow Days. Are you going to have? We're going to have project boards down there too for some of the active projects we got going on, or some of the proposals that we're working on.
Yeah, I think the hope is that we'll be able to have some stuff electronically, but again, we're working on the logistics. Otherwise, we can print and put up some project boards.
Yeah. Are you going to need any help from select board members filling in down there?
We passed around a sign-up sheet today at the staff meeting, but if board members want to come down and man the booth, you're welcome to do it. Just shoot me a note, let me know. Day is it's 10 to 5, both Saturday and Sunday, so just, if you want to do this, shoot me a note of days you want to be there, sure.
Okay, good. I appreciate you getting the booth down there. It's pretty important, right?
I have a couple of questions. One, I know that we passed complete streets after you started those projects, but like the milling of the Hazardville, we're considering bike lanes to when those are available, space-wise.
The resurfacing was just within the existing curb lines. It's not like street reconstruction.
But it still wouldn't be hard to look to see, because that's a large lane road.
I'd have to look at what the pavement marking plan is.
All right, so
it may. I don't know if I'd have to go look.
Yeah, if you could get back to us on that. And then the other thing is, could you also update, because I know there are a few glitches on the tennis court you were going to check on, and you give us an updated report on that in a month or so, would be great. Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Ms. Moderator.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for making room in your agenda for me. Rebecca Townsend, 160 Ely Road. I am very excited about starting the 2016 annual town meeting on May 10th, and I see that it's chock full of things to discuss. Because it's so full, I wanted to share some things that we're thinking of doing and would like your feedback on them. So for the public, you should have gotten the warrant in your reminder. It's also available on the website. And you'll see the warrant has 34 articles in it. There's also a special town meeting that we'll talk about tonight, and that was that is going to be embedded within the annual town meeting, and that's an additional 2 articles. So a total really of 34 articles when you put them all together. Because of this, and because we've heard a lot of feedback that many people don't like staying at town meeting until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, that is it possible to adjourn and then reopen the town meeting on another night? And yes, it is possible. And so to make that possible, there may be a motion made, and I would ask that it be from one of the select board if you choose, but it could be made by any town citizen. At the very beginning of the town meeting, a motion could be made that if we have not yet finished all of the articles on the warrant by 10:30 p.m., that we adjourn until May 11th, which is Wednesday night. So, for example, if we're on Article 28 and we still seem to be going quite a bit, and it's 10:30, after we finish voting on Article 28, we would then adjourn the meeting and take Articles 29, 30, 31, and 32, the rest of the annual town meeting, and handle those on Wednesday night. This is up for town to vote on. The town can decide whether 10:30 works best. The town can also reconsider if we're on Article 31 and we seem to be moving fairly rapidly. A move to reconsider that motion earlier on could be made, and we'll just finish the business in one night. So it's flexible, but it does allow for those people who realize that it's getting quite late and everybody's not as sharp as they normally are at 10:30, 11, 12, to give them an option to do the town's business on a night when they're more fresh. So that's one thing that we could do. To avoid having to go to another night, there's a procedure that I'd like to have for this meeting called the consent agenda. And I believe I spoke with you about it once before before the fall meeting. And I've given you a copy of the consent agenda before the meeting started. The consent agenda is a very simple procedure that allows the town meeting to vote on articles that are reoccurring on the warrant nearly every year, or those that tend not to change from year to year. They may be housekeeping, or they may have very minor policy implications for the town. And there's 9 of them. And I'm just going to read the numbers off for the listeners now. Articles 1, 2, 6, 13, 14, 17, 23, 24, and 25. So a motion to put these articles together on a consent agenda is not debatable, but when I call out the numbers, if somebody wants to say, for example, consider Article 2, the fiscal year 2016 snow and ice removal deficit, they want to talk about that or ask a question, at the time when I call out Article 2, somebody calls out hold. It's as simple as that. And we'll remove Article 2 from the consent agenda and take it up in its natural course. So it's not as if we're foreclosing people's ability to talk on these, but it does provide the town, if we understand these articles to be approvable right away, let's all vote on them once and for all in one vote. So the consent agenda could speed things up. The other thing that could speed things up is if all citizens make brief remarks. If you listen carefully to what has been said before and you realize that, well, the other person just made the point I was going to make, it's not necessary to really repeat that. So careful listening and judicious use of words will help things to flow quickly. One other innovation that I'd like to try, having 3 microphones for citizens. So as you know, in the front of the room for the board microphone and the lead petitioner microphone, that's for the people who are making the main motion on the articles. There's usually just one microphone in the center of the floor. And everybody who wants to speak in favor or opposed or ask a question or make a motion to call the question, they line up together. And so we're not sure whether the person in front is going to speak in favor, whether they're going to speak opposed. And let's say there's 6 people who line up and they're all in favor of the article. So we hear comment after comment after comment of in favor. And we don't get a fair and balanced view of what the meeting, what the sensibilities are. These 3 microphones would allow people to select whether they are in favor and line up in the, I think I'm going to label it green, the yes microphone, One would be marked red, opposed, against the motion, and the third would be, I'm hoping for yellow, that they have a question or they want to make a motion to call the question. This will allow residents, voters, to see what the balance of speakers is going to be. And then when I recognize speakers after the floor is open for discussion, we'll alternate between, well, first, the first speaker is the petitioner or the board, and they're obviously speaking in favor, I'm presuming. So we'll go to the no microphone, then the yes microphone, then the question microphone, and just keep alternating. And of course, after 5 people have spoken in favor and 5 have spoken in opposition, the motion to call the question to stop debate is then in order. And it'll be much easier for everyone to be able to pay attention to that with these 3 microphones. And finally, the last thing I'd like to share is that the procedure that I had outlined for hand counts that we were going to try for fall town meeting never got tried. We had no hand counts last fall meeting, but we'll try for this annual town meeting. And just to quick review, that involves 2 tellers going to a specific section, counting row by row, checking with one another for accuracy. There's going to be they'll count independently in that row, check with one another. If they've got the same number, then they move on and they record those numbers on a piece of paper. And so that should be an accurate way to count the votes. It's recommended in town meeting time, and other towns use it. So with that said, I'd like to either go through the warrant now or discuss any of these procedures. I'm here to answer your questions.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you. I got a bunch of questions, not the least of which is availability of the school on May 11th.
It is available.
It is available.
Yes.
The second concern obviously is people availability. There's a lot of people coming, particularly I suspect for the later articles that are the ones that would get moved. And I think there's some issues of, people going out of their way who have busy schedules to free up Tuesday and ending up at Wednesday. So I can't tell you that I'm tremendously in favor of continuing a town meeting. They have tended in the past, my experience has been, to self-limit themselves when it starts getting very, very late, but it's your town meeting. Just some comments about the consent agenda. A couple of these articles have been published with uncertain or not finalized numbers, and to accept them as a consent agenda would be improper because the townspeople wouldn't know what they're voting on. For example, the snow removal amount.
That's the snow removal.
Snow removal amount is always, we put down a plug number and then say, or other, that's the or other, other numbers that we can adjust. So it's always something that. And the other one I think that's like that was Chapter 90 funding.
That is the right number.
That is the right number in there? Okay, because that had also, we sometimes didn't have the right number for. But I think people need to have the right to hear the right amount of numbers, and the published numbers aren't right on that one at least. So I just thought I'd pass those along.
If it was though, would that satisfy the concern?
Well, but what was published for Article 2 was the snow and ice removal.
He said no. He said if the numbers were right.
I think that's pretty close to the number that we're gonna use. I mean, maybe within a few dollars, but if and I can see that one if it's not exact. The Chapter 91 for sure is exact because we got the letter from the state. And
that's fine. All I'm saying is that we include a lot of these, or take any other action relative thereto that allows us to modify numbers. And if, put something on a consent agenda that's not the number that we plan on passing is inappropriate, I think. So
to be clear on a couple of items, my preference, back to the timing of the meeting, my preference is to get the event in one night. If I have my brothers, I'd rather we talk quickly, get the job done, vote, and finish in one night.
Yeah, I'm just concerned we're going to spend more time talking about these additional motions than just moving. We may end up debating these motions for 25 or 30 minutes instead of actually moving forward on articles. But you can't tell for certain. All I'm saying is that the things I want to express my concern about are obviously school availability, people who made personal commitments, and I think we're going to find potentially that that's a big deal to people having to come back a second night, never having been warned that might happen. I mean, if we had published in advance, we reserve, we may very well go, and I know it's legal, it's all within the rights to adjourn the meeting to be continued, but we have not had a history of doing that. But my real concerns were with the consent agenda. I believe that the 5 and 5 and move on, you've been to enough meetings, that after you hear 5 people on either side, most of the people were ready to vote before they showed up, much less after hearing 5 and 5 discussions, and that can move us along pretty well.
And just to clarify on, say, for example, the Article 2, the sum of $60,000 or a greater or lesser sum, the warrant serves as a warning to town voters about what is the general topic to be discussed. If there's a change to the specific number, it has to be within the scope of the article. And I've been advised by town council that all of these articles that are proposed to go on the consent agenda meet his approval for doing so. So this is.
I'm not objecting to that. I just think that I didn't know if we had the right dollar amount in the published warrant relative to what we were going to put on the agenda, what we were going to state at the agenda. That's all I'm saying, is to the extent that if the published warrant said $60,000 and we decided it would need to be $62,000, the motion was going to say $62,000. That was my only point. And if the motion's different from what's published, you shouldn't be doing it as a consent agenda. That's all my only point.
We can amend it on the floor.
We don't
but you can't do it as a consent agenda. That's all I'm saying.
You can easily just call out hold.
Right. Well, that's all I'm saying is somebody needs to go through this and make sure it's right.
Couldn't you go through these motions and make that amendment? I mean, if they're going to go consent and say
This is a draft proposal for somebody to make that motion. I don't make that motion. It would be somebody like yourselves making that motion. And so if you would like to preemptively take number 2 out, or whatever article it is, then you can do that. That's entirely your prerogative.
Well, can't we amend the amount on the floor as we're going for the consent?
No, a consent agenda allows.
No, as we're going for permission, can we not say with the following exception and modify that one number?
It may be simpler for everyone involved if we just remove it and then have that taken up separately. Because if it's going to cause confusion, I don't want that to happen. I would rather have it be taken out and it be handled on its own.
It's a benign issue anyway. It'll pass. So okay.
Mm-hmm. So if it's your preference, then you can make whatever motion that you would like for those articles on a consent agenda.
So I'll just, Rebecca, I think that's a great idea, and it would move things along quickly because there are some issues that people want to talk about in more detail, and these probably are not them. So I think that is a good approach, and if we could, if we all feel comfortable with the numbers, that they are fairly accurate and that voters aren't really being deceived, that's the important thing. And thank you for. And I do like the idea of having the different mics. We could try it, and if it doesn't work, we'll know for the next town meeting. But I think that's a very creative approach.
Maureen.
Yeah, I think it's great. We really have to look at finding ways to evolve and improve town meeting. My question was in regards to the motion to stop at 10:30. You're saying that has to be done before the very beginning of the meeting. So let's say it's 10 o'clock. Someone can't put that motion on the floor then. You really would only recognize that motion at the beginning.
It's my preference to have it at the beginning, and that way the maximum people who are there at the meeting know that it's there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Having it inserted in the middle, it makes it seem as though the meeting is trying to get away with something. Mm-hmm. Having it up front for everyone to hear makes it quite simple.
And then there's still the option, and I've seen this happen 1 or 2 times, and that's to table a article. and that means and there could be how does that pass? That has to be no one can disagree with that, or is it 2/3 vote? What is,
Tabling, let's see.
and that is then can be opened in any future town meeting.
To lay at the table, it's a second is required. It's not debatable. It's not amendable, and there's a 2/3 majority
2/3 okay.
required. It may be reconsidered, and a resident or voter can later on in the meeting take something off from the table.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can lay it on the table.
That's if they were in the affirmative vote, right?
That one I'm not sure about. I can get back to you on that. But
I think a reconsider
anyone-
has to be somebody that voted in favor of it, because
But with this, it's so hard to tell at town meeting.
Yeah, I know
don't
it.
know how that would be done,
Right.
and I'd want to investigate that. We don't really have a tradition of doing that.
right.
I've only seen
Traditionally,
it
if
once.
something has been tabled, it effectively dies because
Right.
once the meeting is dissolved, it's gone.
Right. And the rescind has to take place at this meeting.
The reconsideration,
The
to take
reconsideration.
something off the table.
And the consent agenda, we don't have to read it. In other words, we usually have to read
You're
warrant
moving
articles
in terms of the articles as they've been printed in the warrant.
as they've been
And
printed in the
that's
warrant.
why, back to Mr. Gould's question about the specific numbers, let's make sure those numbers are specific.
And someone on the board has to put that motion on the floor at the very beginning that the following warrant articles will be consent agenda.
Yes.
And then we vote on those being put on the consent agenda.
We vote on whether, so you're moving to adopt them as part of a consent agenda.
Mhm.
And then the vote of yes or no would be the vote on all of the articles.
Okay, so it's not
One
two
vote.
different votes. It's
Yeah,
just
one
one vote that we agree these are on the consent agenda. And when we approve that, the consent agenda has just been passed. We don't then have to vote that we approve the.
Yep.
Okay. So, but you would be looking to someone on the board to do that, or yeah.
That's my preference, yes.
Okay.
And that number 2 is the only one that's in debate, isn't it, Mark? That's the only one that.
I don't know what's published. I
We published 60. I think it's.
Well, I've got the
close to that
original.
number.
Yeah.
I've got
so if
the
we publish 16, that's what we want. Then it can stay. I just thought we had
Okay.
published a different number.
The chapter 90 bill, the original warrant did not have a number. Without the motion, would have a number.
I think the original. I think the warrant. I think we put the number on the warrant out.
I have a warrant.
What is it?
He's got it.
What number is that one? The
13,
$60,000.
Article 13.
$60,000 was in the
Article
original
13.
warrant. Article 13 did have the total of 476,652.
Are those motions or the warrant?
The warrant.
Yeah, it's a warrant.
Maybe I have an order.
Yeah, and this is the one that received in the mail.
Yeah, we got the letter like the day we sent it to the printer.
So
we
then
updated
these
that.
are accurate
Yeah.
then.
Okay, then they're good.
Then I had another question. I know there's been discussion about trying to do all the CPC articles together. Did you talk about that?
Town council and I, when we discussed them for the purposes of a consent agenda, preferred to keep those separate because there were some concerns about some of them. So we wanted to make sure that those were each addressed individually. And I pretty much believe that they cannot be part of consent agenda anyways, as per mass law.
No, I was thinking of being able to vote all CPC articles up or
you,
down
you need
together.
separate votes.
You need
But-
separate votes for each
Do we
one.
need separate
Okay.
vote? So why do we need separate votes for that, but we don't for a capital plan? Especially, because, and I say that because I can understand the CPC where we've got multiple funding sources. So there's 3 different
Right.
CPC
Funds.
buckets.
Right.
Okay. And I can see that all the ones that are coming from, say, open space, put those together, and all the ones coming from housing put together, and all the ones from undesignated, put those together, as opposed to saying just one for all of them. I don't understand what ruling we got that said we couldn't do that.
I know that Steve Weiss looked into it and talked to the folks at the Community Preservation Association. That's kind of let's say, the governing body, but certainly the advisory organization for all things CPA. And we did talk, and he and town council did talk to Steve Weiss as well. And through all those conversations, it was determined that, now I wasn't privy to them, so I can't tell you the exact reason. I just know that the answer was you have to vote on them separate. Because I asked the same question, because I thought, why don't we just vote on them as a block as well? And we said, no, and I don't know if it's something in the Community Preservation Act itself or what, but they said you need to vote on them
When
separate.
you look at Article 9, we've got 6 different funding sources for 12 or 15 different projects, and it's one article.
Yeah,
Let's-
number 9.
What?
Okay, Maureen.
And then,
Yeah,
so
okay.
want to just quickly go back to understand. So we moved to put on the consent agenda the following articles, and then they have to be said Article 1, and then you pause to see if someone says hold.
Right.
And are you going to
I'll repeat the
instruct-
numbers? I'll say Article 1, Article 2.
And then you'll instruct the residents they have the right to say hold, and okay. But you're waiting for the initial motion to come from the
Yes.
select board. Okay.
When I call for a vote on it, I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to remove one of these articles from the consent agenda. Please call out hold immediately after I call out the number.
Okay. All right. I get the point.
I'm not
Thank
going
you.
to be delaying it very.
Okay.
It's not 1, 2.
All right.
A pause.
I understand. Thank you.
So, Rebecca, thank you for coming in. And just had a couple of comments. I'm not sure that this consent agenda is going to save time, but, I guess it's your prerogative to see, right? I guess it's, I think the discussion that we've just been having about procedure, may be sort of the same thing that could be going on, which, my experience, at town meeting is the things that really aren't debated and are unanimous votes don't take much time as it is. To me, the payoff could be, 2 minutes overall, maybe. So I'm not sure about that, but, and I guess the other comment I would make about this is the fact that there are different numbers sort of scattered about sort of makes it a little more confusing. Again, I get it. But, for the mass who are not following inside baseball of, town government, I'm just a little concerned about that. And I guess one reaction I have is, and part of the reason I'm saying this, I remember there was a bylaw to change the composition of the demolition building committee, which has never met. And, we had, 45 minutes on that, so sometimes it's hard to remember. It's hard to predict that sort of thing. 23 and 24 about these fees. I could see somebody not liking that. It's actually a pretty, significant bump. Let's say you're a week late with your bill, that's a significant percentage of the bill. So that could be something that's not a slam dunk. The other thing that I would say is with respect to the 5 and 5, my observation from Mr. Calick was that, he exercised a fair amount of discretion in when a question would be called. And again, my observation is that, there are some things that I think it would be inappropriate to call. Like when we were having the debate 3 years ago about the school budget and the music department, like that was a big deal, And I guess the thing that if we really are strictly enforcing 5 and 5, and there's a line of people, you're kind of creating a mad rush to the microphone, because people realize, well, I better run up there and, sort of like everybody trying to get on a bus that doesn't have enough space or get out the subway. It's not a edifying process. I guess I would just ask you to, keep that in mind as you exercise your discretion, because, I think, some people could end up, not being heard, but then even worse, then you have that scramble to get to the microphone, and I've seen people kind of disappointed. It's like, oh man, here I was waiting in line. I wasn't trying to jump ahead anybody, and then it becomes the cutoff gets to be just as they were about to speak, and it's a little, I don't know. It makes me cringe a little bit, you know, when I see that, you know. So that's just my reaction to it. You know, as the adjournment, you know, obviously that's going to be a judgment call, right? I mean, you know, I think we've typically gone to 11, sometimes 11:30. If it's, you know, if it's possible to finish it by then, I would favor that, you know. But you know, because I think Mark does make a good point that this will be a surprise, you know, to most people, and you know, if you throw in the consent agenda and the adjournment, there's a lot of discussion about rules, and you know, and not saying that any of them are unsound. It's just, you know, you start talking about the rules and you get the focus off of the merits. So that's just something to think about.
Right.
I was also going to consider asking you if we could limit the number of times someone can speak.
We have a bylaw that does that.
It does. Okay.
Yes, so if you look at the handout that says rules of procedure,
Mm-hmm.
the back side of that,
Mhm.
limits on speech, bylaw 318. Except when the moderator has recognized a voter for the correction of an error or to state an explanation, a voter is not entitled to speak more than 2 times on one question until others who have not spoken have had an opportunity to do so. And a voter is not entitled to speak more than 3 times on one question without first obtaining leave of the meeting to do so.
And is there a limit on time that someone can go and
We
speak?
do not have a bylaw with regard to time limits. Moderator discretion usually plays in that regard.
Okay.
And I shall be listening to everyone very, very carefully.
Mhm.
If I start to hear that somebody is backpedaling or talking about something that they've already talked about 3 minutes ago,
Mhm.
I will ask them to come to the point.
But
And
can
then-
someone stand up and give a 15-minute speech, or do you limit to 5 minutes? Did you have a preference on what we're going to be
I
looking
have asked that lead petitioners try to stay to 5 minutes, please.
for? Okay.
And that subsequent speakers speak no more than for 3 minutes. I mean, it's
Okay.
when you listen to speeches at town meeting, most of them are very brief. They're about
Okay.
1 minute, maybe 2.
Mhm.
It's those exceptions that can go on and on and on that people grow weary of.
Mhm.
And I'd rather have people listen carefully to a carefully worded brief speech
Mhm.
than to get frustrated with their neighbor
Mhm.
for talking for 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick comment, and I think that if we do entertain a motion at the beginning of the meeting saying that if we go past 10:30, we're going to have a meeting the next night, that will remind people of how they should just focus on the issue and respond to the moderator's requests. And, you know, we could remind people at, say, 9:30, say, you know, we're making good progress. We should be able to finish this meeting. Or if we continue at this pace, it looks like we will be calling the question to move to another night. So I think that will be helpful. But I think that unlike our neighbors to the east, you know, East Long Meadow, which is going to move away from a town meeting, you know, I think it's really important that as many people in town participate in our democracy. And that, you know, and I think we've always done a good job with that, and I think we'll continue to do with it. But it is really important that we do, folks who are going to be prepared are going to say, hold that question, I have something to say on it, I have confidence they'll do that. But I think we want to encourage people speaking. I mean, it isn't that we're doing this so less people will speak or you're not going to get a chance to be heard. I think it's a good idea, you know, for us to be more productive. So thanks, Richard.
Now, where do you propose that we insert the special town meeting?
Thinking after Article 9, I believe it is.
After the capital plan.
I'm sorry?
Or after Article 9.
After Article 9. thematically, and if now may be the time to go through some of the articles if you have any questions about handling those.
No, I just want to, so generally, the office prepares the motions for us, so somebody will prepare the motion in after Article 9
To open the special.
to open the special town
We
meeting.
would have to first have a motion to adjourn the special, adjourn the annual.
We adjourn the annual?
We have to adjourn the annual until the conclusion or the dissolution of the special town meeting. So I'll be in touch with the town manager's office and make sure that the precise wording is.
Just get the wording right.
Yes.
I don't recall us ever doing that before. I thought we just opened the special town meeting within the town meeting, but
Well-
it's your meeting. I mean,
To be technically precise, you have to have a pause in the annual meeting, and that pause is done by an adjournment.
In case you're wondering why they're there, I'm sorry. I was just finding just about the placement of them, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
this sort of brings me back to something I was saying before. Like, that's another sort of procedural matter. You know, we've got the adjournment, we've got the consent agenda, we've got the special town meeting. You know, one of the things that we find in court when you try to you could explain to a jury, a bunch of legal instructions. They're still struggling over the most basic things. So this just strikes me as a lot of procedure for the town voters to take in. Okay.
Well, and the other thing I have to confess, I am partisan toward Long Meadow voters. They are a very smart bunch, and when I explain things to them in the meeting itself, I have every faith that they will be able to understand. When I've explained the procedures to people in small groups, in small civic groups that I've spoken to, people listen, they understand, oh, okay, that sounds good, and they move on. So I think those of us who have been in politics for a while get concerned about what the voters will do, and we fear them, wondering what are they going to say. But I think they're going to be fine.
I guess my concern, I also have concerns about how you plan or what plans we may have for guests. And I say that because there have been a number of things published that I've seen copies of to people in surrounding communities go to the Long Meadow Town Meeting to support people who may want to speak or vote in a certain way. And I think we have the potential for having more guests or non-voters at this meeting than not. And I just want to, I don't know if you've got anything particular planned, but my sense is we may not be able to get away with that one little section of the
visitor section
that we did in the past, and we may have to be flexible. And again, when it comes for participation and interaction, what guests can and can't do,
Sure.
It's your meeting,
but I welcome guests, visitors who want to learn about direct democracy, who want to see democracy in action. I think it's great that people are interested in our legislative process, and so I will welcome those guests to go to the clerk's desk, sign in, get their visitors' credentials, and be escorted to the visitors section. If that visitors section gets filled up, we will have some overflow space in, I believe it's the auditorium or the cafeteria, and I'm not sure which one has been finalized yet.
We haven't finalized that.
Okay.
One or the other.
So one of those two adjacent locations. And so visitors to town meeting, like any other town meeting, may sit and listen respectfully, and I expect nothing less from these visitors as well. And so if people think that because we're in a gymnasium they get to cheer or jeer, I'll remind them it's not a sporting occasion, it's a town legislative body, and they should come to order immediately. And if people persist in being out of order after I've directly asked them to come to order, then I will request that the police remove them. But I don't anticipate that happening because I'm sure that they will be wonderful guests.
That includes select board members.
Yes.
what are you looking at me for?
Everyone should come to order.
So doing the wave is out of the question too then, right? Because you're going to be in the gym.
Yeah, no
right.
waves, please.
Mine's just quiet. Go ahead, Marie.
Tom better buy more pizza.
have extra guests.
No, we're gonna sell pizza to
Sell
guests.
pizza.
Yeah, we're gonna offset the whole
Where's
cost.
their residents before they get a slice?
Do you have any questions on the warrant?
I do not. There's one article that requires a 4/5 majority, and just as a reminder to voters that if it's not unanimous in the vote for that, then we must do a hand count for that. So if, people could read that article very carefully, I'd appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Which one is it?
That's
the
Article
bills.
3, paying the bills of the
FY15
previous year.
bills.
Article 3.
So do we want to pay our bills or not?
No.
Well, we
last
pay our
year's
bills,
bill.
but the year's been closed out. So
Okay.
it's a very small amount of money for those who haven't read their warrant
Do you
yet.
have any 2/3 on this?
Oh, yes.
All
How
the
many?
bylaw things are all.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They are. Yeah, all bylaws are.
Okay, just briefly on when I discussed the consent agenda with the moderator, I had the same kind of initial reaction that I think everybody here has had, and I've had time to think about a process and kind of go through it. So what I've come to is it may take an extra 2 minutes or so to explain this to the town meeting and get through the motion. But there are 9 articles, and if you look at each article by itself, taking 90 seconds, even if there's no comments, just somebody standing up, making the motion, a second, any comments, all those in favor signify by raising your cards, blah, 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 and then on the next motion, cumulatively 90 seconds apiece, there's 9 of them, then that's 15 minutes, right? So if it takes an extra 2 minutes to do this and it is successful, then it will have been a nice trade-off of time. So that's the way.
We're not getting through 9 motions in 15 minutes. This never happened.
Right. That's
a best case
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
think
an
what I've laid out kind of a best case scenario at the 90 seconds apiece. But if this is successful, it's a gain of time, and I think, and that's our only concern is I think Mark, what you said. We were planning for the worst, hoping for the best. We lined up the gym, we've lined up overflow space, and we spent. And I give Rebecca credit. She spent a lot of time working with town and school officials to nail down every detail to make sure we're well prepared to have an orderly and efficient town meeting. So a lot of things that we haven't talked about is there's been a tremendous amount of preparation behind the scenes that has gone in. Like I said, I want to give her credit for being directly engaged in the details of it. But we all share the same goals, and this is everything she's presented is geared towards achieving those goals.
And I really appreciate managers' help and the most particularly Kathy Ingram's help, the clerk. She's been wonderful to work with.
I just want to clarify something.
Sure.
I mean, I think we need to, I have no problems with streamlining the town meeting. We only ask people, and more importantly, we only give people in town 2 times a year the ability to come forward and act as the legislative body. And I want to make sure that they don't feel that there's a train coming at them, that this is that nothing to see here, folks. Just vote yes, and we'll move along. People need to have the time to consider them and to vote for them. And in my opinion, if it takes till 11:30, so be it. I really believe that. If we had this meeting going on every month or something like that, I would feel differently. But many of these people, it is for all of them, it's their only chance to do this.
Sure.
So
They've had a week to have sit and read it at home too.
I understand to read it, but not to speak or to act.
We're gonna, if they want to speak, we'll hold a motion.
No, I'm not just talking about the consent agenda, because on the ones that have been picked here, I've probably gone to 35 town meetings, and we haven't had 20 people speak cumulatively on these articles over those 35 years. So, these things don't come up. Now, a couple of them, like you said, the fees, I think we're going to get some concerns about, but, nobody's ever other than to ask what's the meaning of the vending machine one, which they ask for every year. The Goldway, nobody ever asks what that's about. And so, I got no problem with it, but it's this, we're going to limit the amount people can speak. We're going to be out of here at 10:30, or we're going to continue it till the next night is something I do have a concern about.
To be clear, the select board does authorize an annual town meeting in the spring and a special town meeting in the fall, and there's an occasional special one embedded within the annual. Citizens can call a town meeting on their own. They do have that right. And they have that responsibility when they feel so deeply moved. And so if 200 citizens gather together on a petition, they can create a special town meeting even if the select board doesn't think that a town meeting should be held. So town voters do have tremendous power in the open town meeting system. And furthermore, I want to make sure that I'm clear. I am not necessarily shutting people down. All I'm doing is clarifying what the bylaws state. The bylaws state that there is a time for calling the question, or when the calling the question is in order. If the voters would like to continue to talk, then 2/3 of them say, no, we shall not call the question, we shall continue to talk. And that is the right of the voters. The voters get to decide how long they shall talk on any issue. That's not for the moderator to decide.
I agree. I think you did a great job. I'd like to see the consent agenda, and I think everybody would. I mean, we read this stuff, and it's the same thing every year, so I think it's a good part. So then it'll be growing pains this time. But after that, it'll be simple. Any other questions for Rebecca before we let her go for the evening? Rebecca, appreciate all your hard work. I know you have put a lot of work into it. I know you've been with Stephen and the group quite often on this, so appreciate it.
Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate all of your comments and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Do you really look forward to seeing us? Okay. Okay, let's see what we got. Town manager, moderator. Any preference there, Stephen? Let's do the approval on the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the April 19th minutes?
I'll move we approve the April 19th minutes subject to one correction.
Okay. You have a second? I'll second it. Go ahead with your correction, Mark.
Debbie, I didn't send this to you, but down at near the very bottom, the discussion on water meter irrigation, it says presently residents are charged sewer fees for every gallon of water registered on their water meters. I would like to add up to a limit of 220 units, just to clarify that.
Sorry.
Down at the bottom, number 3, water meter irrigation.
Okay.
The third line, it says of water registered on their water meters. You follow that?
The water registered
on their water meters, up to a limit of 220 units. I think that's the clarification, right?
Okay. Any other discussion on the minutes? We've got a second. All in favor of the minutes as amended by Mark? All opposed? Alex, you abstained because you weren't here?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to slip the water meter issue down later in the agenda. The audit committee, ban renewal, quarterly investment report. Paul, what's the flavor?
The audit committee with the town auditors.
Mm-hmm.
I think the audit committee has a couple comments. The auditors have a couple comments in the last for acceptance of the FY15 financial statements.
Okay. You want to bring that up then?
Yeah.
Is the audit committee?
Yeah, it's the
And the auditors.
and the auditors. That in there? Chairman? Go ahead.
Great. We have partners from the auditing firm of Lynch, Malloy, and Marini here to answer your questions about.
Jeff,
Sorry, my name is Jeff Klotz. I live at 487 Commerce Street.
Yeah.
I'm chairman of the town's audit committee.
Thank you.
I have a statement that I'm going to read for simplicity so that it can be handed to you for the minutes. And then after I read it, you can ask the auditors any questions about the financial statements. You don't have a copy of them yet, do you?
Electronic.
Yes.
We have a draft.
Not of the audit. We have a copy of the
We
audit.
will forward to you
Question.
finalized statements. We are recommending that you approve them. I'm so sorry. If you want the opportunity to review them and ask questions, we will schedule something else. But the pace of this has been such that I sit here on May 2nd recommending the financial statements be accepted. As you know, that's no fault of the town staff. That's no fault of the town's auditor. There were precluding dominoes that had to fall, and they did not. So the statement reads very simply: as charged via the town charter, the audit committee provides advice and counsel to the select board, town manager, and other interested parties. It is to do so with the purpose of increasing public confidence and trust in the operations of town government within the scope of responsibility of ensuring the quality of financial reporting. As discussed during the procurement of the current auditor contract in which we hired Lynch, Malloy, and Marini LLP CPA, background work has begun towards the goal of producing for the town a financial statement in accordance with the standards set forth by the Government Finances Officers Association's comprehensive annual financial report. Reminding you specifically, a CAFR is a detailed presentation of a state, city, or town's financial condition. This report is prepared at the end of the fiscal year and is composed of 3 sections: introductory, financial, and statistical. The introductory section includes a transmittal letter. The financial section includes, for each of the last 10 years, various financial statements and schedules, as well as comparisons of budgeted and actual amounts. Because the CAFR presents the complete overall financial results of operations, it also shows the financial investment and revenue records from all sources. The statistical section includes additional financial, economic, and demographic information presented in static and 10-year trend formats. A CAFR will aid the town management and residents to garner a better understanding of the financial data and the implication of past results and trends, and thus make better informed decisions. The town's financial director has expressed confidence that town staff could create the initial CAFR over a 3-year period and without great difficulty subsequently update the information for succeeding CAFRs. To date, all of this background work has been accomplished using in-house resources. LMN has completed work required within the scope of our contract and met with the audit committee to discuss the results. They are here based on their audit to express an opinion on the town's financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2015. It is the audit committee's unanimous recommendation to the select board that they move as follows. We, the members of the Select Board, Town of Long Meadow, move to accept the audit report of the town produced by LMN, and the associated underlying financial statements. They are here prepared to provide a summary. If there are any areas of concern that you wish to ask, they can address them. I apologize that the timing of this project is such that final financial statements are not in your possession. Chairman, how do you wish to proceed?
Is there a requirement that we do this on May 2nd? I mean, I'm really,
We want to see it.
personally, I can't vote for anything I haven't read. You know, and I recognize, I appreciate you guys coming here. I'm going to certainly ask you questions while you're here, but I haven't read the audit. I've read my extent is an audit correction report, which lists just a few items and something that was literally handed to me 25 seconds ago. So,
I honestly, this has been a rushed process to get it to this date.
Is there a reason we needed to get it in this date?
No, there's not an exact reason why. It's just that we are running late.
Oh yeah, but we have new auditors, and
Right.
that's understood and all that kind of stuff.
No fault of their own that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did this late. I had thought that the information had been forwarded. I apologize
Yeah,
if
that's
it's not forwarded. But there's no reason why it has to be accepted today. Basically, it has to be accepted by June 30th. I think the finalized date. Again, I don't know how you want to proceed at this point in time.
Richard, if I could, I'd love to ask, have the opportunity to ask questions, let you folks talk and kind of that. I mean, generally we don't interrogate the auditors a lot, and anyway, and maybe just hold off the vote on approval until after we've read it, and if we have any other questions, we can do them by email or something like that. But and approve it at our next meeting. I think it'll go pretty quickly.
Make the presentation first, and then
sure,
Okay.
Absolutely, I would personally.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your thank you for your time tonight. I'm Robert Lynch, and this is Grady Connor. We're partners with the CPA firm of Lynch, Malloy, Marini, LLP. And we appreciate the opportunity to be of service to the town. As you know, this is our first year doing the audit. And the main reason for the delay in the audit being presented at this time in FY15, there was a new GASB pronouncement that was required to be implemented by the town, and that was to record the net pension liability, which required the county retirement system to have their audit performed in accordance with that. There was a delay in that audit, which is that information needs to be included in the town's audit, hence that was the reason for the delay. We do appreciate the assistance we received from all the town personnel. It was great to learn about the town through the audit process. Just as an overview, you do have a good financial management team in place, and we're pleased to work with them. The drafts were presented to the audit committee and discussed with the audit committee, and we appreciate their time and involvement in the process. We did prepare a handout that was just passed out just to kind of give an overview and the purpose of the audit. Our primary purpose is the independent auditor's report, which is to express an opinion on the town's financial statements. The audit is performed in accordance with government auditing standards, which requires the issuance of an audit report on internal controls and financial reporting that have a direct and material effect on the financial statements. In addition, the town is subject to the single audit requirements because you expend more than $500,000 of federal monies. The results of the audit, where we did have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which mean that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects, that the person reading the financial statements could rely on that information. The financial statements are presented. One set is the government-wide financial statements, which are on a full accrual basis. So that includes your capital assets, your long-term obligations. As mentioned, the big change this year was the implementation of GASB 68 for your net pension liability. The governmental activities or government-wide financial statements include your governmental activities, which are generally all operations of the town, except for your business type activities, the water, sewer, and solid waste, as well as your fiduciary funds. The governmental activities reported an overall net position of $35.4 million, which was comprised of $70.6 million in the net investment in capital assets, the restricted net position of $6.6 million, and the unrestricted net position was in a $41.7 million deficit. The significant components of that deficit were the net pension liability of $36.9 million and the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits obligation of $12.5 million is the liability that's been reported on the town's financial statements as of June 30, 2015. The total OPEB obligation is $28.7 million based upon the actuarial study performed. In FY 2018, GASB 75 will be required to be implemented, which will require the recording of the full OPEB liability. The aggregate net position of the business type activities is $6.8 million. Fund basis statements are also issued, which are reported on the governmental funds on a modified accrual basis, which includes a 60-day property tax accrual. The overall governmental fund balances totaled $8.8 million. The general fund share of that was $6.1 million. Out of that 6.1, 4.6 of that was unassigned, and that includes the operating stabilization fund of $2.7 million. The general fund unassigned balance of the 4.6 is approximately 7.8% of your general fund expenditures for the year. So you have some reserves, which is a good thing. On the budget, your total budget on the revenue of $55.8 million, you had a positive variance of that. Your budgetary revenues were $56.1 million. The final budgeted appropriations of $56.5, you spent $55.7, so you had unexpended of $741,000 on your budget. The audit report on government auditing standards, we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. As I mentioned, you've got a good financial management team in place. In the single audit, where we perform compliance tests related to your major federal programs, we did not have any findings in connection with that. We did have a few recommendations that we have that management is addressing, but that's just a brief overview, and if anyone has any questions, we can try to answer them.
You know, there's a fair amount of jargon in there. And I'm not sure all of us know all these terms, and without the full report, then maybe with a glossary. But could you kind of go through some of those terms? Because otherwise, I was a little lost. So, like net investment in capital assets, like what is that?
That's required. The presentation on the GASB financial reporting model requires that to be booked. So it's your total capital assets at cost basis less the accumulated depreciation, and then it's net of the debt that was acquired, that was used to acquire those capital assets. So if you borrowed, $60 million to build a high school, you start to depreciate that, and then whatever the outstanding balance is on that debt would be your net investment in capital assets.
Is that primarily the high school, and I would assume?
All the assets of the town.
So,
roads, highways, vehicles, infrastructure.
So capital investment in water and sewer pipes, that goes into as part of net capital investment.
Those are under the business type activities, yes,
yes,
but works the same way.
So, Richard has he did a presentation a little while ago. Remember, you identified like $1 billion worth of. No, oh, it wasn't?
No.
I thought it was like
200, 300 million.
All right. Okay. And
the new investment in the past fiscal year,
Yeah.
the net new investment. not
Oh,
total
okay.
investment, right?
Okay.
This is total.
It's the net book value at cost.
Of everything that we have
Yes.
right now. Okay. I mean, again, we're just orders of magnitude. Okay.
But this
Again, it's a little.
Typify what the resources would take to bring it up to standard, though.
Right. Oh, I know that's my question, though. I mean, like, so that there's sort of a disparity there. So I guess I have a little trouble understanding whether 70.6 million is good or bad or, indifferent. The next term is restricted net position. Could you explain that one?
That's going to be your net position that's restricted for specific items, such as your grants that you have, your revolving accounts that you have. So they have to be used for specific reports. Yes.
These are okay. And what was the other? The other question I had, because you were talking about OPEB, and we've gotten other forecasts before, and my recollection was that the forecast was in the $30 million range. Can you comment on why it's 28.7 now, and sort of what period are we talking about? Because whenever we get those forecasts, it's sort of there's an end point that we're thinking about.
I don't know if Grady has anything to add to this, but this is the liability that's booked there. This is a actuarially computed liability as of June 30th, 2015. So some of the other information that you may have had may have been projecting what the liability is going to be, but this is what it was as of that date.
Okay, but
if I can, I think what also happened, that this is the latest, obviously they're using the latest OPEB actuarial study that we had, but prior to that, we had a very large reduction in our OPEB liability because we made some changes to how the retiree health insurance was funded because of the prescription drug plan.
Yeah.
So given that, after that, our premiums went down by basically a third for one of our most popular retiree plans. And if you probably looked at a report of 2 or 3 years ago versus our report that we had last year, you would see that major drop. But that's what it is on the last report that we have.
Okay, but But I guess my recollection was that the forecast that we're getting of these unfunded liabilities, it's over a period of time. I mean, an unfunded liability is, as I understand it, it's an obligation we have now to pay later. Am I getting that part right?
In part, it's the obligation now of what you're paying to the retirees, as well as what you're going to have to pay in the future for your
Right.
current employees.
So I guess that's my question: is sort of what period of time into the future does that $28.7 million apply to?
It projects out for every single employee that you have, projecting out of when they're going to retire and how long you'll have to pay those benefits.
Okay. So, all right.
Is it fair to say it projects out through the expected life expectancy of the population?
Of the employees, correct, yes.
And it would be influenced by their use of insurance, if we had major illness, and if it had spread through those retirees, that would change that figure, it would go up. Is that actuarial? That's what they do.
I think that would happen secondarily if we had major claims amongst those people.
Yeah.
Then the first thing that would happen would be the premiums. I think they're basically based upon premiums. The premiums would go up,
Okay,
and that liability is based upon our premiums, then some medical inflation going forward.
thank you.
So
That's clear.
on the OPEB, I've asked this question before. We have made some funding of the unfunded liability, which I guess actually funded. It's not, that portion is not unfunded anymore. But the contributions that we've made, could you just comment on the materiality of them?
And that's reported. You have set up another post-employment trust fund, and that's reported in the fiduciary funds. And as of June 30th, 2015, that had a balance of $909,000.
So I guess my question is, could you comment on the materiality of that amount as it relates to the town's financial position?
It's a small amount based upon the $12.5 million liability that's booked there, of which the entire liability is 28.7. So you got a long way to go to get that funded.
What do you mean by 12.5 million booked versus the?
Under the GASB Statement 45, when it came into being back in 2009, I believe it was, you started to book that 1 year of liability. So you may have had a $28 million liability, but you only booked 1 year's worth of it. So, and then each year since then, you've been adding on and booking an additional year. So it's up to currently right now, the liability you have booked is the $12.5 million, but the overall liability of the town is the $28.7 million. And similar to the net pension obligation that you had to book this year, in fiscal year 2018, when GASB 75 is implemented, you will need to book that full liability of the OPEB as a liability on your financial statements.
Well, I have a question. When you mentioned the last paragraph, general fund budgetary schedule, and you say the final budget appropriation, $56.5 million. We spent $55.7, and so that's $741,000. That figure. So that's just. Does that? I don't know. Paul probably would know. What happens to that figure? I mean, is that free cash?
Essentially, it's returned back to the general fund, and we'll go into the calculation of the free cash.
Okay, so we did pretty well for considering what the size of our budget. I mean, we're pretty close.
We did all right in FY15.
Yeah.
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 FY15.
It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Is the pension, the net pension liability is at 36.9? Is that our other pension system?
Yes, that's what they have in county retirement.
How is that in comparison to our last review?
I'd have to look. They're hovering at 48 to 60%. I remember being funded maybe at 60% at one point in time, if I recall correctly. And I think this is around 50%.
Right.
I think it has come down over the last couple of years, probably by the drop in the stock market.
So together about 68 million, I guess. Huh? Yeah.
So, I mean, we've had we've devoted a lot of discussion about OPEB, and I don't know, in the last 3 years, I don't really discuss. I mean, we've gotten updates about the pension liability, but we've never really grappled with it. And my sense of it was because that's being handled by this outside board. I mean, is there anything that we should be doing with that?
It's being handled by an outside board, but we're also fully funding the pension liability over a period of years. It's built into our appropriation annually. So where that, potentially, if things go as expected, as their actual report says, and we're being charged, that liability should disappear in 2038 or something to that nature. But again, we are on a program to have that disappear over a period of years. With the OPEB, we are not funding that pension liability in which way, shape, or form. We're only funding the amount that is currently due in a fiscal year.
So you're saying that the annual contributions that we make are not just to pay out the pensions that go out the door that year, but it's to chip away at that unfunded liability. Okay.
Well, that one's under control, but the OPEB's not.
I don't know if you'd say it's under control, but it's on a schedule. Yes.
How's the emphasis? Go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is, I know the schedule that the board has put us on, but it's going out. It's like a 25, 30 year before they're going to catch up on the liability. And I know the percentage of what they're still at 8% in their calculations. And I don't know if we're up to 50. I think it's dropping. Does that affect our ratings when we start to go out and look? I mean, is that affecting our bottom line statement, or since it's a board and we're not in direct control of it, it's not affecting? Do we need to be concerned about that?
Well, I think you should certainly be concerned about that, because if the projections that they're using to fund this are not realistic, and in this market environment, I don't know how realistic 8% is, but this looks at the long term. So that's looking at the long term effect. So they could address that as well as other actuarial evaluations they're using. Right now, this is the first year that you've booked the liability for the net pension, and as with OPEB, what the rating agencies are saying is, they don't expect you to be funding $15 or $28 million liability like that. But what they do want to see is you have a plan, that management knows about the liability, you have a plan in place, and you're sticking to that plan. So if you said, well, we're going to put in $1 million every year, and, well, we can use the $1 million elsewhere in the budget, and you don't do that plan, that's going to be a negative to the town. If you say we're going to do $100,000 a year and you stick to that plan, right now that's what the rating agencies are looking at.
So as long as the board has a plan and we're following the board's plan, they're satisfied with that?
At this point in time. Now, that's what they're doing now. 5 years from now, if a bunch of other communities have made greater strides towards funding that and you haven't, that could be a negative, but time will tell.
So as long as we don't do what we did this year, we're going to be doing pretty good.
Well, yeah, but we didn't. The OPEB, I'm talking the pension now, because the pension, we're being just given a bill every year, and we pay the bill. That's it. We don't really have involvement on what the plan is. We just follow the plan. But you're saying eventually the rating agencies could actually look at the plan and decide if the plan's adequate.
Right. I think that's what will happen. I didn't come circle with my comments there, but yeah, I think they'll start to look at the pension and compare you to other communities and other pension plans and see where they are in being funded, and that could have a negative impact.
But it just, like you mentioned, a future GASB statement of 75, that has nothing to do with, we don't know when that's going to happen. That's just a possibility in the future.
No, that's going to happen in fiscal year 2018, where you're going to have to record that additional liability on the town's financial statements.
And that is 75. Is that for pension or OPEB? That's the OPEB
That'll
one.
pick up again if you're just using those numbers. That'd pick up the difference.
Yeah. And I think Mr. Grant was referring to materiality. Is we're putting away such a little amount compared to what our actual liability is. The question the board keeps arguing back and forth is it worth it to put anything away because we're so far behind? Now, you're saying that in the Gatsby Statement 75, they're going to actually start looking about the amount we're putting away compared to our full liability because it's going to be on the books.
No, there's a liability on the books now. There's $12.5 million on the books now out of the $28 million. And they're looking at that now. So they're not, that's what I'm saying is they want to know now that you have a plan in place and that you're trying to fund it. They're not so concerned about the dollar amount at this point, but that you're aware of the liability and you have a plan in place to start to address it. Down the road, they're going to start to probably look at the amount that you're funding.
So that's true of the pension. You said right now, as long as we have a plan, but I'm saying that's true of the pension, it's true of OPEB, but you just don't know when that time's going to say, where they're going to say, hold it, you might have a plan you're following, but it's inadequate. We just don't know when that's going to happen.
What I would recommend is as you go through reviews by the rating agencies is to have that conversation with them, to get more up to speed of what they're thinking. That's we had conversations last year with them, and that's where they are.
In the last conversation we had with Moody, they brought that out. They said they're starting to look at it, and they're going to have considerably emphasis as years go by now. And they're basically sending a shot across the bow, telling people you better start thinking about your liabilities.
Now, if they're doing that, is there anything that you recommend in the way of percentages we should be upping on either the OPEB or the pension plans? Or you're just saying keep it in mind at this point in time?
Well, my recommendation is fully funded. If you're looking for a recommendation from me, I know that's not realistic. So do what you can.
Okay.
We had made a board action to try to take it up 0.25% per year.
Yeah, Paul mentioned that.
And I know we're going to have stress holding to that, but we thought that would show sufficient emphasis from the town and the financial people here that we were aware of it and we were trying to be proactive in funding. How important, and I know you're asking off the top, we understand 100% is where we should be, but is that 0.25% over what we basically set up before? Is it that important that we show that type of increases or that type of energy going towards that?
I think it's important to say 0.25% additional annually.
Right.
So while 0.25% this year, in 5 years, it would have a more significant amount. So
right.
I just wanted to clarify that was the board's position.
Right, and we didn't hit a cap limit yet. We just said 0.25%. We felt we could absorb that much.
And again, that's having a plan, so you're sticking with that. But the important thing there is to stick with it. Because if you have a plan and you don't do it, I think that's going to be a problem.
But is it more positive for us to show a progressive plan where we're trying, or at least identifying, or are we better off just to pick 700,000 or 400 and put it in every year?
I would think a more progressive plan would be than a flat static amount.
Even if it's 0.25% increase, okay. So that's why we put it in. So our judgment was sound.
Well, sound, but you're telling us we actually might have shot ourselves in the foot because we didn't stick to it.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
We didn't stick to it this year, and so.
Some of you didn't.
So we have a meeting with you, and you say, "Look, you got to take this seriously," and then we have other groups in town saying, "Look, you've got to take our funding seriously, and we need this," and so. The board's in a jam, and
which group counts the most?
I guess that would be the school department, which put a lot of pressure on us to change our funding.
I think the outside auditors count more.
Yeah. So now, what kind of penalty are we going to face for changing this plan? Is it just going to be a letter of reprimand, or is it going to be?
Right. Ultimately, that's what it'll be: is higher interest rates when you bond.
It affects our bond rating.
Yeah, we're going to ruin our credit rating.
Yeah.
Sort of like when you don't pay your bills. You pay your bills, but if you didn't pay your bills, your credit rating goes to poop.
Credit rating goes down. So yeah.
Sure.
I mean, are you aware of what percentage we've been at? I mean, because your opinion, is going to be subject to a lot of discussion in town government for the next year. So I was just wondering your opinion about that you've just expressed. I mean, are you aware of what percentage we've been putting in and what that plan was, or
percentage of what you've been contributing to OPEB?
Yes.
Yes, Paul had said what the plan was.
All right. And I mean, do you have an opinion as to what percentage it ought to be versus another?
Again, if you're looking for my recommendation, it's going to be fund the whole thing, which I know is not realistic.
Right,
but,
right.
But I'm not going to say fund 100,000, and somebody else might think it should be 200, or somebody else is going to say 50. Fund the whole thing. If you're asking my recommendation,
Yeah, right.
I know it's not realistic.
And can now, I mean, I guess one of the things that I've heard is a lot of towns have set up OPEB funds, but they don't necessarily put money into it every year.
Mhm.
And have you, because you said we're going to pay higher interest rates, like it's
Possibly.
well, I don't know, I took it the way you said it as that would happen.
I don't determine the interest that you're going
Right,
to pay.
right.
I mean, these are what my statements tonight are based upon conversations I've had with the rating agencies on how they're looking at this liability.
And I get that it's possible, but I mean, so have the towns who, I mean, I assume there are towns that contribute a lot less than us.
Mhm.
And have you been able to tie the interest rates that they pay to their OPEB?
No, this is something probably within the past year or so that the rating agencies have started to look at, and that's what they're looking at now. You know, how accelerated that is going to be, and that, what's going to happen is when an issue comes up, all of a sudden they're going to say, all right, now we're really looking at it. That might be a year from now, that might be 5 years from now.
Now, it's the other thing too, the rating agency has multiple aspects that they look at within town
Well, that's
government.
what I was-
So
I was
this
getting
is
at.
one
Right,
of them.
right.
It's just one
So,
factor.
I mean, it's
Right,
not,
I'm sure.
it's
Yeah.
a factor, but it's one of many.
Right.
Right.
Many
I mean,
metrics
I
to
guess
look
I was just, I was struck by the sort of straight line correlation that you were drawing between, sticking to the plan and you will pay higher interest rates. So that was, I wasn't sure that's what you were really
Right,
saying.
we were talking, the subject of the conversation was the OPEB. Not, yeah.
I mean, I think to reinforce the point, for us, I think we're pretty comfortable with the notion that there is a straight line for Long Meadow to not following a plan, not making contributions, and higher interest rates because of the multiple factors that go into the rating agencies' evaluations of our credit worthiness. So, yes, they're drawing a straight line, but I think we've made clear in our presentations on whether it's past audits or the rating agency or anything else that we are worried. We think that there's probably a straight line for us. So
Is that an analysis that you have committed to paper that you can share with us?
I think it's been reported on and discussed often here.
I've never seen an analysis of it. I mean, I've heard your opinion, but I mean, it sounds like you've run the numbers and I've
Have you ever been a
seen
part
that.
of a bond rating process at all? Because never mind.
Okay, I assume you don't have anything to that effect.
It comes from the bond hearing conference call. It was the discussion that all of this information was come out on it. This is what they
And
were
then we get
advising us.
And then we get our ratings report from Moody's. It's a narrative, and it's been shared. It's been distributed to the board. It's a narrative, and they explain for themselves how they view the town. I don't know when it was distributed, but we can go back and find it.
About a year ago, we had
Yeah, if you go back to the last Moody's thing, it'd be in one of the packets that it's not my words, it's their words.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that you had made a straight line correlation, and I was just trying to figure out.
No,
I was just trying to figure out where that was coming from.
I guess it was from the discussion, I think.
I'm reporting what we heard from
Yeah,
rating
reporting what we
agencies
heard from
and
the rating
their report that we analyzed plus
Mark.
our discussion with the auditors.
My comments have, I don't know if they're, Mr. Lynch, for you or for our town CFO here, but, there's a, as you keep saying, good, fully funded. Well, theoretically, we could fully fund it. We can go out and borrow $28 million, fully fund it, and pay the interest on that $28 million, which, by the way, we're at historically low interest rates still for municipalities. Alleviate about $1.25 million a year that we pay out of current operations for OPEB funds for retirees that would then come out of that fund, right? I mean, net, we'd be a little bit behind, but we may not be that far behind. And the question is, and my question for the accountants is, if a town could swing financing this thing, do you feel strongly enough about finance to, fund the whole thing to go out and borrow the money and you got it?
I think you'd have to take a look at the analysis.
So it's an analysis worth doing. I mean, I know it's behind, but I mean, right now, Paul, isn't it $1.25 million or something that goes to retirees, medical, or
That's what
something?
we pay out annually for retirees.
Right, so-
1.1, 1.2 at best.
Right. So
Paul and I talked about it before too, and you had a question on being able to use the money like that.
Well, I don't think these statutes allow municipalities to bond in that. The first thing would have to be through special legislation, if I'm correct on that nature. I know there have been communities that did get the special
We had that
legislation.
discussion before. Same thing.
In which case, yeah, after that, we'd have to run the numbers to make sure. But I think the first step would be, again, running the numbers, and then we may have to get the special legislation, as I said, to do it. I don't think the statutes currently allow for.
right, but if financially it's not bad, given the fact that we may be paying very low interest rates, given over a 20-year or 25-year history.
Pardon my ignorance, but just for public knowledge, is this debt excluded?
That would be the vote of the town.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, it could be anything you want it to be.
Right.
And then the special legislation would have to allow for that.
Yeah. Right. You're right. Could be anything you want.
Yeah. Maureen?
But if you're talking about paying off the whole liability and this future GASB Statement 75, you wouldn't be looking at the 12.5, you would be looking at the 28.7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
And some towns have fully funded in Massachusetts. And we talked about the Direct Line, they have a higher bond rating, aren't they? AAA or something
I
now?
believe so. I believe they are.
Is that one?
Was that Northbrook?
Wellesley.
Oh, Wellesley was the one that's...
Special legislation for it.
And so they did special legislation and then they borrowed the money to take care of that. But that was only OPEB. Did they do they haven't done the pension.
That was for OPEB.
That was for the OPEB only. Now, I actually went back and read the last two Moody letters to try to get a feeling before tonight's meeting. And the one thing that was described in both the 2011 and the 2015 was concern about our reserves. And in fact, the discussion that the town manager was talking about was the concerns about our funds are not being high enough, as well as talking about the OPEB not being funded. Now, the number are we looking at, because I'm trying to read, is it the 8.8 where we are now in the in our aggregate funds? Is that the number they were talking about, that they want us to be at 10%? And we're not at 10%.
They're going to look at your unassigned.
So when they're talking about the 10%, they're talking about the unassigned?
Of the general fund.
The general fund.
The general fund. So what number are we in that free cash that they are concerned about?
You're 4.6 unassigned.
4.6. And does that include the OPEB?
No.
So
This
that
is-
OPEB fund is not included in this.
That's correct.
So right now, Moody is especially nervous about us in regards to that we only have the 4.6.
And that includes the stabilization fund, correct?
Okay, and I know you said everything looks good, but that's not really where we need to be. Where do we need to be double that, or what number do we need to be at?
The comment that Moody's made was that our 4.6 or percentage of 7.8, however you want to look at it, does not look good in comparable communities at the same rating that they have.
Okay.
That obviously we're on the lower end, but that rating scale, they would like to see some percentages. We're at the lower end of that scale and typically might drop off into the next lower scale. So anything that we can do to increase that percentage or that dollar value is going to get us away from that, I don't want to say negative outlook that they gave us, but that negative comment that they gave us.
Yeah, the direction we're going is the wrong
The
direction.
that we're going is wrong. Again, with comparable rated communities, we're at the lower end of our unreserved fund balance.
And they emphasize that actually more than the OPEB. And now you're telling me the OPEB is not part of the 4.6. So my question is, where would you like us to be? If it's 4.6 is low, are we aiming for 8? Where should we be to this will allow us to just maintain our rating. It doesn't allow us to get better ratings. And so where would you feel more comfortable with that fund being?
Well,
Or where would
we have
Moody?
not performed a financial analysis of the town from the standpoint of comparing it to other communities.
Mhm.
We've performed an audit of the town's financial statements for which we've given you an unmodified opinion. But
Mhm.
certainly, you probably want to get up in that 10% range.
And 10% would be
If you
closer to 6 million.
Yeah.
6 million. Okay.
I think.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get an idea. I know what you're doing is the health according to the records. I'm trying to figure out because what worries me is when you talk about the current new Gatsby statements and what we're facing in the future. I'm trying to figure out where is the best place to put our assets and our attempts to make changes.
I think I would just, not to speak for them, but I would echo his comment. If you have a policy, you should follow it. And we do have a policy on reserves, and we are on the low end of our policy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have, and one of the reasons why we have a high bond rating is because the town has good financial policies that have been adopted by the board or by bylaw. The key is to follow them, and not just follow them on the minimum criteria, follow them and try and be in the mid-range. And that's something that I know Paul and I have pointed out. That is a goal for us that right now we're not high achieving on, but that's the point, is follow your own policies.
And I think following Alex's comment, this will be my last one, and then following Alex's comment, it'd be nice to see whether it's a written recommendation coming from the auditors or the CFO or something that the boards could all see, that this is a concern in town that we really should be addressing, which would be the low end of the policy in the funding as well as the funding of the liability.
My recommendation, we could look at the policies as they stand and itemize where we are. I think in the budget report, I did make a statement that I think our reserves as a percentage of revenues is actually declining from July of 2000, projected July of 2016 from July of 2015. It's going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of let's get back to the policies and let's move them forward as opposed to backwards.
Well, then I'd like to be able to, so that's a section of the report. I'd like to take a copy of that and to send it to the various boards and committees so we're all on the same page and realize the seriousness of some of the decisions that are being made.
What would the boards and committees have to do?
Well, they make a lot of decisions at town meeting on our final budget. I'm talking about the cuts we made this year that in our policies.
We made cuts.
Mm-hmm.
In here, there wasn't a board or committee that made us do that.
Well, I think the school committee should also know. That's what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant our other boards and committees.
No, I'm talking about finance committee. The audit. All of us should be hearing the same information.
I think we've been saying it. People are not believing it.
Management letter.
Yeah.
Always ensure we always put this stuff right out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe in our last statement to the board, to the town, we expressed a fear that if we continued our policies, we would not be able to be financially solid. I have a question. We received this announcement. It's the draft of the audit correction report. Is that
You received that from me.
Oh, that's for you. Okay.
Right, it is based upon their findings, and it's again, it's basically a plan on how to implement their findings, who's responsible, some timetables, things of that nature.
All right. I don't see too much we need to address on this. The only question I had was it said that we needed to look at student activity funds back to February 16th. That's not that long ago. Is that, or no? So that's the only other, is that the only action we would really need to take on this, the other stuff?
I don't know, there's really no action that you folks need to take. There's
Okay.
recommendations that management team would take on in order to basically see a year from now, see those eliminated.
Mhm.
On that particular one that you're referring to, the school department is hiring an outside auditor to audit their student activity funds.
Oh, okay, great.
I believe their auditor is going to start this month. So in that regard, that would be addressed, and any findings coming from those student activity funds would be addressed separately. But that audit is to take place, I believe, this month.
Great, thank you.
There's a responsible party column,
Oh, okay.
and it's mostly administrative. It's all administrative folks that are responsible for the items.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark.
A few things. First of all, a question. Have you, as the auditors, had a chance to speak to our audit committee without management being present?
Yes.
Okay.
Early on at the initial part of the audit.
But not since you've completed with any of your findings.
We have always been available for open mind.
Well, I would ask that you schedule a time for them to speak with you without management present, just to hear that they have nothing to say. I just think that's good practice.
We had a conference call. We did not do it face to face.
Fine, that's fine, and conference call works fine. But I'm a believer that auditors ought to talk to the boards outside of management, at least for a 5-minute conversation, hopefully to say everything's great. So that's my first question. I think we heard a little bit of this here, but I think this presentation needs to go to the school committee. I mean, they've got to, not only because some of our audit correction actions have to do with them, but the fact is that we have been unable to implement the chain of management in our finance department as mandated by our charter. And I say that because the school committee runs an independent bookkeeping, accounting, business management team. And our charter called for that not to happen, and it's never been integrated. And I can't make it integrate. People in town haven't been able to make it integrate, even though the charter does. And I think the school committee therefore has a separate fiduciary, because they were elected, responsibility to see the impact of the audit. And I say that because the word hasn't gotten out. So that's my personal opinion. The other comment I would ask is, and I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but for board members here, we've been talking about the potential impact on our rating, our bond rating of OPEB contributions, OPEB liabilities, pension contributions, pension liabilities. But I guess the question I would have for the auditors is, what's the potential impact on our bond rating of our inability to raise taxes because we hit the tax ceiling, tax levy limit? Wouldn't that have a greater impact on our bond rating if we could no longer raise taxes than would our inability to contribute to OPEB?
We're only contracted for 2 more years.
We have a few more to go. We got 2.6 years till we run out of levy limit capacity.
Certainly that's a concern. I mean, which is the greater factor? There's a lot of factors and metrics that get looked at.
It was to some degree a rhetorical question. I think that we're spending an awful lot of time concerned about, rightfully, OPEB, when I got to believe if a bond rating agency said you can't raise any more money, they'd be awfully concerned about our ability to maintain our ability to run as a town. Anyway, that's.
But you have to understand, Mark, too, most of our debt is excluded from Prop 2.5. So that debt has almost a guaranteed revenue stream. And the other debt that we have, a lot of it's in water and sewer, which is paid by water and sewer rates.
Right.
So it's almost guaranteed revenue stream for probably 95% of our debt. There's very little.
So,
debt.
and that's all bond rating agencies care about.
The bond rating agency judges you on ability to pay. You have guaranteed revenue streams in that regard. So they may not like the numbers, but our ability to pay should not be affected by us hitting that Prop 2.5.
But that same argument then works for the OPEB discussion, doesn't it? I mean, because if our bond is excluded,
I'm just saying it may not have the negative.
Okay, I'm with you, Paul. I follow you.
That's all.
I follow. Okay, thank you. I would encourage the audit committee though to see if we could schedule at least a review, if not with our auditors, but by the audit committee, of this audit with the school committee. I think it's important that they hear it.
Do we have any other questions? Now, do you still want to get this full report before you vote on accepting this audit report?
Yeah, because I don't know what I'm voting on. I mean, I appreciate it. I can't imagine what I'm going to see in there that's going to have me vote against it. But
can't either. But if you'd like to see it,
if you want to take a vote, take a vote. I just won't. I'll abstain. I mean, okay. You want if it's important
what's the
enough
feeling
to
of the board?
Again, I wouldn't vote for something I haven't seen.
Okay, well, there's still 3 votes. What's your feelings, Marie?
I'd like to see the report too.
Okay, then it's 2-3, so we will go ahead and we will ask for the report to send in. I'm satisfied. I'm ready to vote, but I'm outvoted. Okay, I don't anticipate there being anything in this report that has been talked to us about already. But If no other questions for the gentleman, folks, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Jeff, appreciate it. You'll get the report to us that you got? Yeah, you had.
That, but also the audit. I mean, I see the
Yeah, the audit, the final report will be available, never mind the draft that we had. The final report will be available in a day or so, I imagine. So we'll forward it on.
Okay, so it'll be on the next agenda then. Debbie, you want to put a note on that? We'll have this on next agenda. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night. Thank you.
Ban renewal. I guess, Paul, you can stay right where you are.
Sure.
You got a quarterly report and ban renewal. And John Dearborn, you want to come up and take one of the mics and you'll be all set to go? We'll get the ban report out of the way in the quarterly investment report.
Can I start off by just making a motion for the ban and then we can
Yeah.
discuss it there, Paul?
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that we award Unibranch a 6-month, $1,313,500 bond anticipation note dated May 18, 2016 at a rate of 0.70%.
Okay, I'll second the motion. We're in discussion. Any discussion on the motion? Any desire for questions to the CFO on this?
Just the.
Hmm?
I assume he was going to say something,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. I don't know. Sometimes you guys read it, you're ready to go, and sometimes you're not. So we've got a motion, so I assumed it. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, Mark almost summarized the whole thing right there.
Go ahead.
We basically have a ban that is due on the 18th of May. It's total $1.485 million. We are making some minor additions to some prior authorizations that we had where we did not fully bond in order that we meet our cash flow requirements for those particular ones. And again, we're adding $14,000 to Crestview from a previous amount. That will bring us up to the full $219 that was authorized. And we're adding $4,000 to the Sewer Hazardville Road to bring that up to 370. Of which 404 was bonded. We may not need that additional money. We are paying off a number, partial amounts on certain ones. We're paying off an additional $190,000, 300. That is contingent upon $78,000 plus being appropriated at town meeting for the high school project, which I'm confident will pass. We'll have $200,000 outstanding on the high school at that point in time. The game plan is to renew these 1-year notes per se, as opposed to going out and get a small 2-year loan. Spoke to the financial advisor. We're better off rolling the dice in this fashion. We're paying very small issuance fees like $500. The interest rates will be lower with these rollover of bans, so on and so forth. So he believes we're totally on the right track in doing these things. And we have what we hope to authorize is $1.313 million. We had 4 bids that came in, all of which were very close. Low bidder being 0.70. The other 3 bids came in at 0.75. So it's a no-brainer, obviously, to give it to the low bid. And these will be 6 months bans due in, I think, November 18th of 2016, at which time I'll be before you again, changing around the numbers, but saying the same stuff.
Any discussion? Paul, the fiber optics project, why did I think that was... That's the schedule we originally set up that goes through next
We
year?
were doing it for 5 years.
Okay, somehow I thought it was less than 5. Okay.
This actually, the amount outstanding, that $44,000, is the total amount that's outstanding. So that will be fully paid off in FY17.
Okay. Because it just seems like we've been doing that. No, but there's also we're making some adjustment to the operating budget because right?
We had at one point in time, I had asked for extra money going back, I think it was 2 years ago, a substantial amount of money to accelerate some of these things. But
no, there was the school committee, the IT budget was being reduced by the amount of money we were paying on this.
The IT budget was reduced that first year that we did it. Now, whatever happened to it after
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it didn't stay cut.
I can't say whether it's state cut or not. I mean, I think it started off from a lower base after that,
Yeah.
and it might have graduated in smaller increments. I don't think the 44 ever made it really back into their budget. overall.
And I guess, Stephen, the question for you is, on both Crestview and Hazardville, the additional we're bonding, that's money that, since the last time we banned this, we had additional bills come in. Is that what
It's not necessarily that. A lot of it was, yes, additional bills came in, but it was timing of it, especially with Hazardville or even Crestview. We didn't need the full amount of money. If we look at Hazardville, we didn't need $370,000. We might have had expenses of $366. We're authorized to borrow $404.
Right.
We don't need $404. We need $370 to cover our bills.
So when do we go back and, if I recall, we've got to go to town meeting and change the authorization to reduce the. Don't we have
Once
to?
the project is complete and we're probably fully paid off, or at least once the project is complete and the bills are all paid, we would go back and we would rescind the extra money.
Okay, but we're supposed to do that, correct? Or we have to do that.
We would have to do that if there's any unauthorized debt. So with Crestview, we've actually are authorizing the full $219,000.
Okay.
So there would be no unauthorized debt in that particular case. But in Hazardville, it looks like we will have an amount that is unauthorized, in which case we would go back to town meeting at some time in the future to rescind that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, ready for a vote? All in favor? All opposed?
I will pass around the bond notes that must be signed very shortly. If you want to get into the investment report very quickly. Again, per the policy, the town had no long-term investments exceeding 5 years. The individual bank balances all were under the $5 million provision. All the ratings were green by Veribank. And we had missed out on a few times in the previous reports of all our accounts being fully insured and secured because of the buyout of Berkshire Bank by Hamden. Those banks, or those CDs that we had with Berkshire have been liquidated. The CDs became due. So we were back in the good where all our funds are fully secured and or insured. We also had the issue with the state law that had some changes where trust funds, the bank needed to have a home base in Massachusetts, otherwise we couldn't do business with them. We reclassified that money per your vote back in February of last year, so we're in compliance with that issue. The biggest thing that's probably happened within the community is the MSBA back in February paid us off the full amount that they owed us. They sent a check for over $2 million. That allowed us to reduce the ban authorization that we had outstanding back in February to the $278,000 plus that we currently have outstanding. So we're in good shape in that regard. And then we're going to be a few weeks ago now we've moved around some money that were in lower interest bearing accounts, which is a normal process, into the higher interest bearing accounts. We started off the quarter on January 1st with just under $16 million. We ended the quarter with $16.8 million. Actually, the first quarter of any fiscal year is very plentiful when it comes to revenue coming in because we normally have our first motor vehicle excise tax bill going out to the tune of about $1.8 million. And we also we have a water and sewer bill that goes out in early March, and we have a lot of revenue. So that it's usually a bountiful quarter that comes in, and we're basically right where we should be with cash in that regard. I don't think there's anything else that is of any major difference between prior reports as opposed to what is shown here. I don't know if people have specific questions with any of this. I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions on I can't get my file. Can't get my file open.
Absolutely straightforward. Okay, so everything, as long as it's green in that column N, that's all.
It's green.
Anything else, Paul?
No, that's really it. Again, the report is fairly straightforward. Again, the good news is that we've gotten back in compliance, full compliance.
Okay.
We have the fully insured avenue there. I mean, we weren't really worried about Berkshire Bank, but at the same time, it was a deviation from our policy request requirements. So.
Okay. Once again, thank you for coming in, briefing the board, and for your participation tonight. And John Dearborn, our chief of the fire department, and you're coming up with an EMS rate review.
Yeah, I come to you tonight wearing my third hat as your emergency medical services director. So, over the past year, since I've taken over, I've been doing a lot of analysis of the department. That started out with developing a 25-year capital plan for all the equipment for the services my department provides. When I started going through that plan, I was spent a lot of time with Paul, probably bothering Paul an awful lot on how the system works and what percentages of the EMS revenues go towards our budget every year and how we pay the different bills and a lot of the historical information on that. So as I went through that, I also had an interesting experience. I had a customer, a person from our community has a recurring medical issue. And as I've stated in the past, Long Meadow Fire Department does not conduct all of the transports for people in town. From time to time, we have to farm that out to private services. So this person came in, and she had a Long Meadow Fire Department bill and one from a private provider. And the private provider's bill was double of what we charged. So I found that very interesting and said, geez, are we missing the boat here? The other thing that concerned me is when I started looking at our capital outlay as it was going to be coming up next year, our expenses continue to grow. A couple of things impact that. What we're required to provide for pre-hospital medical care is absolutely the best it's ever been. We bring the emergency room to your house. There's a cost to that. Personnel expenses continue to grow. Our budget, although it doesn't grow as much as I'd like, does grow, so our contribution increases there also. So I've looked at all those costs, and when I started doing a 5-year and 10-year analysis on that, I found that we were not making enough revenue to sustain the service. So I engaged with some of my fellow fire chiefs. The large percentage of emergency medical services in Western Mass actually is fire-based. So I took it on myself to organize a survey. Some other chiefs gathered on. So we actually looked at all the rates that are provided, charged for EMS, and much to my surprise, we were very low. So I did a little research on how we got there, and I think when we started this service 22 years ago, we had to have some policies in place, and at that point, I think we set some policies to utilize the Medicare rates and the increases every year to establish our own rates. Unfortunately, Medicare hasn't kept up with the cost of doing business for EMS. I think some of you in the medical field, you see that. So in this year, actually, there was a 0.4% decrease in Medicare, and it certainly doesn't catch up with my expenses. So I wanted to go to a cost-based and doing a cost analysis, and also looking what's reasonable and what's charged around the region and what the standard rates are. The rates aren't set by anybody but us. Currently, there's no legislation, no laws. We have to set it's really turned to be reasonable rates. So if you go to the table that I provided you on page 3 through 5, here's a table 1. It's a rate comparison and recommendation. The far left table talks about the type of call levels we provide. There's different menu items per se. Basic life support call is basically that's a ride to the hospital, a very basic assessment. You may get oxygen, splinting, finger fracture, wrist fracture, something like that. Advanced life support number 1 is by far 62.51% of our calls. That's the service we provide. That's the cardiac monitor. That's the paramedic level assessment. That's intravenous. That's one medication. So it's basically, that's our meat and potatoes call. That's a paramedic service in a nutshell. Then advanced life support is for more serious. That's 2 more medications if we have to do cardiac pacing, defibrillation, cardioversion, some of the more aggressive skills. That's only 0.96% of the time. Specialty care transport is not a service we offer, but we have to, by the DPH regulations, provide a rate for that. And that's interfacility, that's post-surgical patients. Intercepts, we do provide intercepts. It's basically our ambulance travels, meets another ambulance coming from another community. Our paramedics hop on board. We provide paramedic service, we ride on their ambulance, so we have a flat fee for that. and then we charge every transport gets a loaded mileage rate. So I'm going through that. I looked at our current rates, the current Medicare rates, and I'll talk about that in a second. I got a list from our billing company, the top 50 rates in Western Mass. And I took from our survey the regional average for Western Mass. Let me just talk about, and I'm sure where concerns will come up is, what's the impact to the residents with this? So, talk about our patients who are on Medicare. So, our Medicare patients, Medicare dictates what we can charge them, all right? So, no matter what we come up for with a rate tonight, we can only bill them at that Medicare rate. So, if I say I'm going to charge $1,000 for an ambulance run, at the end of the day, whatever Medicare dictates I can charge that patient is what they get. They'll get, Medicare will pay 80% of the Medicare rate. Okay, it's a set fee. And then if they have a supplemental like Medicaid or one of the Fallon or one of those, they typically pay the 20%. So they're 100% covered. So rate increase by us really doesn't impact those Medicare patients.
So like right now, for basic life support is $376 is the Medicare rate.
Yes, sir.
So no matter what we decide, you are bound.
I am bound. That's all I can
send that bill out.
Yeah, that's all I can collect on that call.
And I take it that does not apply to private insurers.
It does not. So the private insurance is what we bill,
right?
Less your copay or your deductible. Now, when you're transported by ambulance, you go to the hospital. In the hospital, that copay or deductible is all within that bundle. So you're going to pay that copay or that deductible no matter what, whether it be to us or the hospital. I can tell you that the fee for ambulance transport to the hospital, no matter what service we provide, how excellent it is going to be much lower than what the charges at the emergency room. So the deductible typically gets consumed by the hospital, but it gets paid. I mean, I have a deductible. I'm sure most of you have deductibles. If you use the ambulance, your deductible is going to get paid out, and from there, the insurance covers the rest.
How about if they have Social Security and supplemental insurance?
So that'd be Medicare, Medicaid, and that's capped.
Okay, well, what about if they have another insurance? Then you go to that other insurance company?
If you're under the Medicare, the other insurance will pay the 20% that Medicare doesn't pay.
So on those cases, you can go on down and retrieve.
No, actually, if your first insurance is the Medicare, we can't go beyond that.
You can't go to a secondary insurer?
No, only for the 20%.
Only for what you can go for 20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's the 20% that Medicare doesn't pay.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if they say we pay, $600, total, they pay 80% of that, and then the other 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand the math.
Okay.
So
Good.
So
Sorry.
So obviously, I'm in service to the residents of Long Meadow. I don't want to burden anybody with this. So we have a couple things in place. Through our billing company, we have the ability to set up payment plans. And that actually happens very rarely. The other one we have is an abatement program, and that was actually set up by the board years ago, where if somebody who's truly had an issue, they can fill out a form, they submit it to me, the fire chief, and we can actually write their bill off. I can tell you that in the 10 months that I've been the fire chief, I've not received one of those. I actually went back and looked through our files, and we have excellent files on our EMS system. The last, we had one in 2013 and then one in 2011. And those were for copay amounts. So they were in the hundreds of dollars. And in those cases, we wrote them off. And to do those write-offs, it requires my signature and the town manager's signature. They're pretty rare instance. So currently, our collectible money, we are still in the high 90s. We are one of the two highest that our billing company, customers our billing company handles in collection rates. Our collection levels are very consistent in what we make every year. Really what it's come down to is just the cost of doing business has gone up, and we haven't really kept up with the Joneses with the existing policy. So what the rates I'm recommending tonight are a dramatic increase, but based on our capital outlays and doing projections with what our budget contributions will be over the next 5 years, if we do nothing tonight, we'll have a deficit in capital expense of $239,000 in 5 years. And and again, these are numbers are based on projected collections. I mean, if we do less ambulance calls, but this is taking 5-year data and applying it. If we make the recommended changes tonight, we'll have a surplus of $292,500, which would put us right in line for the next ambulance purchase. So we'd actually have the money for that. So,
Great job, Chief. You know, I mean, you picked up on this right as you hit the ground running, so to speak, and noticed that there's a discrepancy, and yeah, the Medicaid rates are so low. I mean, and they drop them every year.
Yeah.
They don't increase them. They keep dropping them. I remember when this discussion happened last year, and I was thinking they should charge more because, most of the times you don't get paid what you charge anyways.
Right.
And so, as long as you have a standard, reasonable rate, I think that's a good way to go. And you've done your research on it. And we also do have a backup for people who are in a bind financially. So, no, I think it's a good direction. I'd support this.
Chief, I have a question for you. You had said that we can only bill what Medicare is going to pay, right? Or we can only collect what Medicare is going to pay.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, I mean, I guess the question is, what percentage of our calls are Medicare?
Actually, I have that. That's in your spreadsheet.
Yeah, I was trying to find that.
Yeah, it's in, that's going to be table 5. Third page, page 5, table 5.
81. So Medicare is 28%.
Yep. 28.14%.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. But okay. So essentially, the invoice to those folks is going to be whatever Medicare pays us.
What they dictate to us.
But it's the 50.26% of insurance, and perhaps the 3% that's also Medicaid that's got supplemental, who are going to be paying this additional revenue. This additional cost.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I mean, I went through and actually calculated the percentage increases, and I know, I was trying to understand the adjustments going from where we were to the average of the regional communities, and that's the number you took. You just took the average and plugged that in.
Well, actually, I didn't. I used that as a guide, but
Okay.
I also went through and plugged in all our capital and budget. I ran a calculator to do that.
Okay, because we'll talk about the ones we use the most, which are Advanced Life Support 1 and Advanced Life Support 2. So Advanced Life Support 1 goes up 47%, and Advanced Life Support 2 21% or 21.8%, and the others are either 20% or 0 in the case of the intercept rate. And
yeah, I can speak to why there's a difference.
Right. I guess the 47% increase in one jump kind of speaks to me as wow.
Yeah, and I can tell you why. That's so that we provide that service 62.51% of the time. So it's our most expensive service to provide. All right, that's the $50,000 cardiac monitor. That's a $20,000 interosseous drill. The consumables on those calls are extraordinarily expensive. So that's the deal. They're the majority of our calls and are the most expensive of our calls. So we're basically at the rate we're at now. We are losing money every time we go out the
So
door.
when was the last time we had a rate increase in these rates? Haven't we done this in the last?
February of 2015.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, last year.
So I mean, it just seems that we've been going up, but I'm just.
You went up 1.5% last adjustment.
Mm-hmm. I think if I can I build on that to answer your question?
Yeah.
Or if I smell what you're cooking over there, I think how the chief introduced this issue was something that is new, and the previous chief and the department really hadn't looked at it in this way on a comparative, market comparison value. We only looked at it as what does Medicare allow you to go up every year and applied those rates, and that is one way to do it. But I think what the chief brought to our attention is that, wait a minute, there's also a market opportunity here that we are foregoing. And, I think the thing is, just like a 47% increase isn't like a 47% water rate increase where the homeowner or the ratepayer directly gets hit 47%. It gets washed out amongst the pool of the insured, insurance company wide. Just like right now, AMR is the beneficiary of our lower rates, really because their higher increases get washed out company wide. For all those insured, like Health New England, everybody who's insured by Health New England owns a small piece of the rates. So it's not like you're hitting one person 47%.
Well, I understand that, but we're the same group who's running around saying, my goodness, our medical costs are going way up for our employees. We got to do something to control medical costs, and we're raising medical costs, so we can't have it both ways. I mean,
yes and no.
I hear you, and just before Maria and I'll just finish up is, originally, I remember in town when we created our ambulance service. I remember the town meeting we did that, and you probably do too, Gene.
Yes.
And it was because we wanted to establish a service for the people in town. Nobody said it was because we needed to make money. And at this point, we use our ambulance revenues beyond the original intent, which was allow us to buy a new ambulance and service the ambulance, and it supports our overall EMS. Well, it supports our whole fire department to a small extent. There's some contribution to the which is fine because it can do that. But I guess I'd like to consider going back to the theory of we are trying to provide to some degree of service to our residents. We're not trying to lose money on the deal. We're not in this to lose money on the deal because we can't afford to lose money on the deal, but nor do we need to make a lot of money on the deal. And if we're not the most expensive guy in town, that's okay with me. I don't know that we need to be the cheapest. The approach of being in the middle isn't too bad, but I'm 47% is wow. Well, how do we get stuck with that? We should have stepped up to it.
And I agree with you. I will tell you that even with the 46% increase, if you look down at table number 2, we're still cheaper than the private service. If you're even with the new rates,
right.
So,
Richard, Marie's got.
Go ahead, Marie. I nodded to you before.
I see it. I disagree with the town manager and with Mark Gold strongly on this point. I don't think your analysis was where can we make money. Your analysis is let's cover our costs. When you come in front of us and you talk to us about you need to have so many EMTs on there in order to cover how many runs, you're talking about covering your costs on the people, the bodies that are going in there, plus the supplies. What my shock value is, oh my gosh, we should have been doing this analysis years ago. We need to cover our costs. I think the residents want to see an ambulance service available. They want a top-notch service. They want the top-notch people there. And right now you're telling us we're running a fabulous ambulance service for the residents and we're not covering our costs. In fact, we're going in the hole. So I applaud you. In regards to, there's no way we should have ever been pegging our rates to Medicare. No one does that. You charge everyone what your cost of the service are, and you know that you're not going to make you're going to lose every time you do a Medicare run. I'm thrilled to see your Medicare runs are so few. I thought it would be more the 80 or 90%.
We are an anomaly there.
I'm really shocked by that, but I'm thrilled. I think the residents want a top-notch system, and what it's going to cost is what we should be charging. We should not be having our taxpayers subsidizing the service, which is what I think we're looking at. The only thing I'm shocked at is your intercept rate, which you says 14.93, you're keeping flat rate, which is really below the regional average as well as the top 50 mass average, which I can understand why you didn't go to that.
I didn't explain that well enough.
Okay.
So I'm currently in 3-year agreements.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I'm in the actually just finishing the first year, 3-year agreements on those. I fully intend to increase those at the end of those agreements.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, Chief Madison negotiated those just months before he left.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing that as a favor to me. He was trying to take work off my plate.
And could you explain? I don't even know what an intercept rate is. So could you explain that?
So what the normal scenario is? East Long Meadow is serviced by American Medical Response. Okay, and I'm not sure what their contract says they should do over there. I think I do, but many times they don't send paramedics to calls. So they go to your house and you need a paramedic, but they don't provide it, like we do 100% of the time in Long Meadow. So that ambulance comes to the hospital, they call us. I will send our ambulance out with a paramedic. They will get onto that AMR truck with the proper equipment to treat that patient, and we will take them to the hospital, and they'll get the highest level of pre-hospital care.
Okay, and so that, I see. So that was an agreement that had to be made with.
Yeah, and actually it was somewhat reciprocal. If you up until 2001, we relied a lot on intercepts ourselves until we went to fully paramedics. So.
And I'm also shocked that your rate is 26%, a 96% collection.
Yeah.
Does that, because that doesn't count the fact that the large write-off with the Medicare.
Okay, so that's, it's 96% of the adjusted.
Rate, yeah.
So
it's still pretty good.
It's very good.
Because that's only 4% that you're not able to collect.
Yeah, it makes my job a lot easier. Every month I get the uncollectible, to sort out, and it's very little. It's 2, 3, 4 accounts, so.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And I think that shows how the residents really respect and appreciate the service that's being provided.
And honestly, typically the people that we're not collected for are car accidents and stuff, stuff that's hung up in courts and things like that. So.
And I remember you coming for us before and saying that there's a lot you have to turn away because we just don't have the staffing and
if I could speak to that very quickly, we still have to turn away some of the calls. But we've made an extraordinary effort, and I credit my staff 100% with this, to try to field the second ambulance at every available circumstance. It takes a lot of jockeying to provide adequate fire protection and run both ambulances. This month, for the first time in our service history, we only turned away 2 transports out of all the calls this month. And that was an extraordinary effort by my staff to do that. So. In all those other transports this month, they got Long Meadow firefighters, that quality service. So we're going to do our best to maintain that, but obviously at staffing levels and run volumes, it's difficult to do that. So.
Because you're technically running 2 services that a lot of fire companies can't, which is a EMT service as well as firefighting.
Absolutely.
And you're using the same
people.
bodies
Yeah,
to do that. And how many, I heard you said there were a lot of other fire departments that are running EMT services, but what percentage do you think are doing both?
Oh, I have to look. The vast majority of Western Massachusetts right now is fire-based EMS. Holyoke, Springfield, East Long Meadow are the only ones in the Lower Valley here that use private service. There's some departments are supplement their fire-based service with paramedics from private service, but even call volunteer departments, the small ambulance squads, and most of them are fire-based now. Because, it's lean times. You have to combine resources. So it's a very cost-effective way to provide both fire protection and the ambulance.
And one last question. Is there anything that you're cutting back on? Because you've now described the fact that we really haven't been supporting the service to the extent that we need to. Is there any we've hesitated to buy that should be in these ambulances because we've been cutting back?
Our equipment is good. I need, based on not having enough available revenue right now, I'm probably going to delay an ambulance replacement by a year. And if I had a choice, and I had the extra money right now, I would replace. We're currently on the second ambulance. We're running. It's a perfectly safe cardiac monitor, but it's antiquated technology. It doesn't provide telemetry, so I can't send strips to the hospital. So. It's not end of life, but you know how technology goes. 5 years after you buy it, our goal is to keep these 7 years, but it's antiquated already. So I will probably move up the replacement schedule on that, and that's a $50,000 investment.
So it's a $50,000 investment in what you're looking for.
Right.
Okay, that's important to know. Thank you very much.
I just want to piggyback on one thing that you were saying, because when we look at our low rate, what we're really doing is subsidizing the insurance companies, because they're getting a great quality product
Very happy
at a
with
much
those
lower
products.
price.
Right.
So that's what we're subsidizing.
That's
it isn't
true.
like we're subsidizing our residents.
You're right.
We're subsidizing insurance companies because they get a paramedic and all this top equipment
Yes,
at the
that-
same
that-
price
that's
where they
an
would pay someone a lot
Outstanding
less.
point. And
Yeah.
our billing company has told me just that.
No, okay. And
That's the thing, Paul, I seem to recall like 6 years ago or something, the select board used to get a list periodically of past due bills to the town, everything from daycare to, and it seemed to me that the ambulance service was just right up there. It sounds like there's been a major shift in collection. That was before we went to collection agencies, and sounds like there's been a major shift in collection of ambulance fees relative to what we did, let's say 10 years ago or something.
Obamacare?
No, I don't know what it is, but is that true?
I'd have to look at it. I mean, we do have that report. I don't think there's a new one every month, but we do run it periodically. I'd have to look at the last one. Certainly, ambulance is popular. False alarm, answering false alarms is pretty popular too.
But there has been apparently, if we're getting 96% pay, that's a whole lot different from what it used to be, I think.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'd have to look at it, but quite honestly, to see what the categories are.
Thanks.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
Marie was asking about this intercept service. So you're saying that our people hop on to the ambulance of a private company
Or another fire department, yes.
or another fire department, and we do that because our people are better than their people, or are we also?
They're trained. Our people are trained at a higher level. So
Okay.
they're say paramedics, what our folks are, the highest level pre-hospital care.
Yeah.
And then there's basic life support providers. So that's another available service.
So those people with less training might be on these private ambulances.
Yes, sir.
And are we jumping on board with our equipment, or are we relying upon the equipment that's in
No,
the ambulance?
100% of the time we take our equipment with us because obviously we're familiar with familiar, trained, certified.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And those are about 14% of our calls. So.
And the other ambulance service is billing at a premium rate more than the 200.
No, actually, I'll be honest with you. The person who saves there is the customer because they're paying for the basic plus the $250. So if you actually were smart enough to set it up that way,
So we bill the customer. We don't bill the other ambulance.
no, we bill the other ambulance company $250. So they charge the basic rate, mileage plus the $250.
You hope.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Do we have any further questions for?
Will you ever consider a GoFundMe for something like the $50,000 heart equipment?
I don't think it's a department that I'd be authorized to do that. Yeah, I just, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I hope to come to you within the next month or so to give you a grant, another federal grant announcement for auto-load stretchers, which will significantly decrease the cost, the replacement cost of your next two ambulances. So, what's that?
$10,000?
$80,000.
I thought that was $10,000 addition.
No, it's a $40,000 to $50,000 addition to the new ambulance purchase.
Check the paper. Okay, any other things from the chief?
Yeah, I just want to commend the chief for his work on this. I mean, I think he's obviously a lot of research went into this, a lot of outreach. He was also at the same time working with the ISO rating agency, and we just got our rating lowered, which is a positive thing. 2 steps, actually. That's two. We don't have time to explain what ISO means, but you guys all know it's an important thing for our insurance, I believe our liability coverage insurance, right?
It's more of a residential property.
Right. That's right. Our residential property owners, we'll have a more detailed report on it later, but doing the research on the EMS rates, writing grants. So it's only been 10 months, but it's been a very productive 10 months for the chief, and I want to commend him for that.
Okay. Anything else?
Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the rates? All in favor? All opposed? No? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Dave echoed it, but we say it from the board. You did a lot of work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. So.
Okay. All right. We are down to EMS rates, hazardous mitigation plan.
Yes. So,
Give me on
my
again.
colleague at PVPC
Copy of those.
this evening, not here. I did just, that's why I left to call her to say, are you coming here? And she said that she misplaced the meeting on her calendar, but did say that this is kind of a pro forma thing, that we are one of, I think, 5 or 6 communities that have been going through this at the same time. Chief Dearborn has been somewhat involved in this. I don't want to...
Trying to catch up.
Yeah, I don't want to oversell his involvement. Again, as you saw the names on the list, this has been going on for a long time. There were public meetings a few years ago. FEMA has been involved. So like I said, it's been a slow-moving project, and this could be the kind of final step to kind of put this to bed. I think when you read if you go through the 104 pages, a lot of it is just meteorological or geological descriptions of different kinds of events. It's not really all that specific. I guess I would ask that the board adopt the plan so we can keep the process moving forward with FEMA. FEMA has approved the plan. They gave us some feedback, some specific feedback. We amended the plan, largely Pioneer Valley Planning Commission amended the plan. FEMA has signed off on it pending the adoption of this resolution that you guys had in the packet. I'd ask that we could just get this thing off the table because it is somewhat of a pro forma thing, but if the board wants to hold off and have Catherine Orte from Pioneer Valley come back and answer questions, we can do that too.
Yeah, just some comments, even I did go through that there's, just on page 51, it talks about, I think, floods is the section, and it says we have 3 dams, 2 are low potential problems, 1 is a significant potential problems, but the table shows 3 at low significant problems, so low potential problems. So the table doesn't match the verbiage. I don't know if anybody picked that up, but I just highlighted it was page 51. I think the verbiage was probably page 50 or something like that.
Okay.
But so I think that my sense is that I don't know which one's correct, but whether we have, but in terms of action steps, there were 2 things that struck me of all these potential hazards, and I got to tell you, this for people at home, this reads like a what's your worst nightmare, and they got them all listed here. But the 2 things that struck me here were protection of our sewage treatment pump didn't seem to be highlighted sufficiently to me from flooding, particularly. It would seem to me that, having read this, we ought to be building literally a waterproof dam around there that goes up 10 feet or something, because we could be in some serious trouble in this town which was a high probability flood, knocks out that pumping station. And I think that to not include that might be something or to include that might be something we want to do. And the other one that struck me there was the dam that I think is, I forgot which brook it was, but I think they designated as at the Long Meadow Country Club pond there, that had a pretty significant potential damage if that dam was to fail. And there was nothing in there about mitigating that through a plan. And those were the 2 things that kind of jumped out at me, that there was no mitigation plan for those 2 items when they seem to be the most potential.
All I can tell you, Mark, is that, like I said, the team that developed this knows the town very, very well. If there's a reason why it wasn't in here, there's probably a reason for it. I just don't know. I was not really directly involved in it, but I know it's obviously very thorough. I've taken the comments down. I'll certainly go back to PVPC, and I can even reach out to the previous members of the team and find out, unless you know the answer.
Well, I did have Mima come in because I'm trying to get up to speed on this. I was a little blindsided by this. I'm not going to mislead you at all on it. So I had Mima come in this week, and I spoke to them because some of the analysis I saw in there really didn't meet what I thought as the emergency manager. So certainly, if a project's not listed on here, it doesn't preclude it or exclude it going down the road. So if we identify those, I agree with you with the country club dam. There needs to be an assessment on that. I agree with you on the wastewater pumping station. Those to me are no-brainers. So So we certainly should look at those. And I think as the process moves on, we'll have the opportunity to look at those. There's other projects that aren't listed here, emergency power and things like that. That could be dynamic. There's some projects listed here that have been addressed already. Really this, what I've been told by MEMA on this is, this shows that you've done a thorough analysis. It's certainly not a static document. It can be moved forward. And I think as we work with the new staff at DPW and identifying projects that will better protect the community, we can certainly look at those. So
I'd like to build on what the chief just said, because we've commented more than once that the 4 of the 5 names on this are people who've moved on. I'd really like to see, Chief Dearborn and Mario Mazza and Chief Stankiewicz and take a look at this as a dynamic document. I'm not saying don't adopt it, but as a dynamic document, and just say, okay, from your point of view, take a year and bring us an updated version of it or a modified version of it.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Because I agree with you, and I think the two things I want to build with the chief saying, this is by no means anywhere close to our only effort on hazard mitigation or planning. In fact, it's probably an afterthought in many ways, because as he said, he's the emergency management director. We do many things to prepare for emergencies well beyond this kind of bureaucratic document. Like many things that we deal with, though, in order to be eligible for grants to do better planning and better emergency preparedness, right, especially federal grants, you have to have this bureaucratic document completed and the box checked off.
Yes.
There's a May 25th. One of the reasons why this was time sensitive was there's a May 25th deadline for the next round of for hazard mitigation planning, and our team, Jeff McGallman, Mario Mazza, Chief Dearborn, Chief Stankiewicz, we want to pursue a grant for the next round of planning, and we have to have this approved to do that. So that's really the primary reason.
And I didn't say don't approve it. I said we should approve it, but still ask for it to be updated. Because I got to tell you that it was just struck by the omission of our wastewater treatment facility. And the other thing is, and I don't know what other people saw looking at it, is it played pretty lightly on the biggest problem I've lived through in this town, which was that October 2011 storm. You weren't here, Stephen, but it pretty much paralyzed us for 6 or 7 days. It clearly mentioned it, but that was the perfect storm of a scenario of all kinds of things that went wrong. And I don't know that it had any recommendations for what we should have done to be either better prepared or to
This meets the requirements to move us in the right direction going forward.
Fine, and I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared. I'm not saying we're not going forward.
One of those things is remove the trees.
No.
The answer is yes.
I get it.
Yeah, wait a minute, Marie, and then Tom, you can chat.
Yeah, I attended, I don't know, it was 2012. They had the initial public meeting, and they did discuss the wastewater plant and how many feet it would affect it and what happens if it goes up so many feet and where they need to raise it. So, but I consider this just the foundation, and I'm hoping that you guys will build on it. And it's just an outline. But I think that DPW has been talking about the floodplain and that the wastewater treatment's there. I think your points are right. We should follow up on the dams and see what your recommendations are. But I recommend we adopt this now so we can get moving.
Is it a quick, now we've done some work. I know that like over at Captain Drive, right, it was all washed out. And did they give us any feedback about, like, did we do the right stuff?
So... And I don't have the answer for you to that. There was some mitigation money that was used for some of those projects.
Yeah.
I don't have the breakdown. I was actually going to research that today, and just not enough hours in the day.
All right.
That's not what this does.
Right.
That's not this document is also boilerplate. There's, like I said, there's 5 or 6 other towns in this little working group that's been getting all these emails. There's probably a document that looks almost exactly like this one. Other than the customization for the rankings of certain assets and things like that, Tom. The thing that you're talking about, especially with regards to stormwater, that's the MS4 thing that we've been talking about with the stormwater utility. I mean, that's really the next, in terms of the next stage of looking at that, that's what that's about.
Okay,
I don't know. To me, there's a lot here. I mean, there's 104 pages. I mean, wonder how many of us have really digested it without any aid to doing that. You know, as we know, that none of the people who actually prepared it are here. The town manager hasn't really gone through it. You're kind.
I read it cover to cover.
Okay, but recent. I mean, you said you were getting.
Today I read it.
Yeah, okay, all right. And I'm sure you've read it, but I mean, in terms of providing us guidance, I don't feel like I'm prepared. It's just one of the things to me. If it came back that there was something deficient in it, we just have no excuse, right? Because we said, well, we didn't really understand it, but we voted for it anyway. So.
Totally fair.
I think that's about right.
It's been under review
but not by us.
But it doesn't matter. We're not the experts.
All right. Okay.
No, I mean,
all right. Well, if that doesn't matter to you, that's fine.
No, it doesn't matter to me because it's been reviewed by FEMA and the experts and Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
The board's been given drafts and
drafts.
A draft of the document, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I know.
Well, that's not very useful. 3 years later.
I'm in the same boat, though. I mean, all of a sudden
all right, that's fine. That's why we need help.
FEMA says we've approved your plan. Now go adopt it, and there's a grant deadline. I mean, like I said, Alex, I think it's largely a bureaucratic document. It's a foundation, it's a baseline to move forward from. I don't want to get too carried away in terms of the value of this to our actual hazard mitigation planning. It is of a low value in terms of how we actually do our work.
It's formalization of advanced planning for mitigation.
Right. It's part of the process.
And it is based on our best judgment at that point in time. And if we have a disaster tomorrow, we'll rewrite the manual. That's what you do. The manuals were rewritten after 9/11. All of them.
Yep.
This is a product of 9/11.
It is.
These are just standard documents across. I mean, we had the federal government, we had mitigation plans all over the place, and they were constantly reviewed. This thing should be reviewed every year. Every incident should be reviewed because you go back to the reference on it. So in that respect, Alex, is why I can't get too upset about trying to hold it up because our review, I doubt very much if we will add anything to the review. Mark brought up 2 points, but they've been so noted before. And John's noted them, and these are points that they're going to investigate now. But to hold it up any further serves no benefit.
Held it up at all up to this point, and the town manager, to his credit, recognized that it was important to have somebody here to explain it.
Right.
Just because of life happens, right? Scheduling snafu, she's not here. So I mean, again, to me, the basic duty of an elected official is not to vote for stuff you don't understand.
Okay. I have a motion to approve.
I have a motion to adopt.
It is a motion to adopt the resolution, a motion to approve the resolution of adoption.
So moved.
Well, why don't you read it?
Therefore, it be resolved that the Long Meadow Select Board adopts the. Do I have to read the whole thing? Whereas the town of Long Meadow established a committee to prepare a local natural hazards mitigation plan, and whereas special public planning meetings were held in 2012 and 2013 regarding the development and review of local natural hazard mitigation plan, and whereas the Long Meadow local natural hazard mitigation plan contains several potential future projects to mitigate hazard damage in the town, and whereas a duly noted public hearing was held by the Long Meadow Select Board on May 2nd, 2016 to formally approve and adopt the local natural hazard mitigation plan. Therefore be it resolved that the Long Meadow Select Board adopts the Long Meadow local natural hazardous mitigation plan.
I'll second that. You don't have to repeat it.
I was going to say, are you going to repeat it? Any other discussion on it?
Just that we do request a follow-up and what is happening on a regular basis.
Mark?
I was going to say what Marie just said. I'd like to put a time certain on that. And I don't know whether it's 6 months or whatever. But
it'd be nice to put it on our schedule. Maybe every July review our hazard mitigation plan.
You're the chief incident commander.
I am.
What's your review period on these policies?
I think periodically probably should come in and report to you on all the emergency management activities, and we've got so many of them going on right now. We've got everything from shelters. I mean, this is a tiny part of what's really going on.
Right.
So,
can we look at
quarterly?
6 months?
I don't know, Stephen.
Once or twice a year is sufficient.
Yeah. Okay.
And especially after an incident, we'll debrief incidents
Yeah.
anyway if something comes up.
We do exercises. I submit reports on them in the town manager's report, and we do the agreement with JGS. I mean, we do bits and pieces, but to have a consolidated reminder, we do this all the time, staff level. It's important to have it somewhat fresh in your head, because if something, God forbid, does happen, you're not going to have a time for a recitation class before you have to be ready to respond. So I think that's a key thing.
And I'm sure John uses this in his recurring training with his workforce and everything else. These are good topics to pull out. I mean, there's a lot of training material here too.
Never nothing to do.
Right, right. So, okay, all in favor? All opposed?
Only you two guys sign it.
Yeah, okay. Yes,
And then I'll have Kathy Ingram test it tomorrow.
Okay, we had talked about, we're going to wrap up here pretty quick. Thank you, John.
Have a great evening.
Appreciate your help, and we'll talk to you in 6 months when you review this thing and come back with modifications. We had talked about the water meter program last week, and since that time I've found out that apparently your people are reading the meters now monthly.
Since the beginning of the fiscal year, so we've got several almost a year's worth of data already.
We've got, that's fantastic. Okay, so we're not going to worry too much about that. I was going to propose we start reading them, but they did take the hint before they started reading. And what I'm going to do, unless the board is adamantly opposed, I'm going to work with DPW through Stephen during the next 6-8 months and start to look at the data and see if we can come back with a proposal to the board that is sounded out enough that it shows actual impacts. Alex, it may even be you won't be here, but there may be even the tiered water rate get into that too. That may be one of the conclusions that comes into it.
I ask that the proposal be available by October so that we can have time to talk about it before.
No.
Don't we make our decisions in December?
Mm-hmm.
No, January.
January.
January?
For saying the rates, but to do something different than we're already doing
Needed a town meeting.
requires a town meeting.
Right, town meeting.
Oh, so we really need earlier than that. We need September.
We basically have to go back to town meeting again with the bylaw revision, but this time I think we'd make a proposal based. Last time people were suspicious of the rate structure that didn't exist, that they thought we were trying to pull over on them, and maybe the way to do it going forward is to present an actual rate structure along with the bylaw change.
I think we need to think it out. I'll try, but I can't guarantee because I have commitments this summer too.
Yeah. But we could just aim for September so we could get
We'll aim for it and we'll see what it looks like.
If it's a consumption-only system, yes, but if it's not a consumption-only system, then it's the springtime is the real deadline.
Right, and the board's going to want to review it, and they're going to want to talk. So it's going to be a long-range project. It's not a short one. It's going to take a lot of time, effort, and extra time on my part to put in. Mark, he had sent in a memorandum. Yeah, you got to go, Stephen. Okay, well, this discussion here can be here anyway. Mark had sent in a memorandum on the upcoming selection for the adult center committee. I think we've got is it 12 people, Debbie, or 11?
I think it's 13 now, isn't it? No.
We had one drop out.
Oh, they did.
So, I forgot to check that figure. Okay, well, it's somewhere around 10 or 11 people, and we had said we were going to set that committee at 9 people. And Mark had sent in a grading system, and Mark and I exchanged emails back and forth, and he preferences by saying that theoretically it looks like everybody is equally, not so much equally, but qualified to be on that committee. And I went back and said, well, if that's true, why don't we just draw names out of a hat if they're all qualified? And Mark had proposed the system, and I had proposed something before. I think I shared with him, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care what we do, but we do have to figure out a system to select 9 out of the 11 people. And I even mentioned to Mark, I said, well, I'm not even opposed to increasing the committee to 11 people. Put every one of them on there.
Should we consider 2 alternates? Because a lot of times when you have a long-term committee like this, you have people dropping out.
Well, yeah, that's true. You do. The only thing that was difficult, and Mark, I'm going to give it to you in just a second. You talk about it. It looked like in Mark's system that there was one person who was going to be dropped out and would be considered, because the way we gave 1s to 9 of them, and then we rated the other ones, and if they got too low of a rating, they were dropped off consideration, which doesn't seem good because they're all pretty decent people that came in for these interviews to talk to us. They have sincere amount of interest in it. I told Mark I couldn't tell you how I could grade them right now. I just think every one of them are qualified personally. But anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Yeah, I just thought that rather than try to rank them 1 to 11 or 1 to 12 in order, we would each say, here's my 9 votes, and of the remaining, I just rank them 2, 3, and 4, or 2, 3, whatever, and that way, anybody who gets 5 ones, they're on it, and everybody else, then you look at what the others are, and you decide. But that makes it a lot easier for us to do the rankings, and it also makes it easier to find 9 people. I think, I understand, Richard, your points, but I think we're committed to 9 people. We ought to go with 9 people, and whatever it is, that's the way it'll fall, and we'll see what happens. So it was just a process rather than saying, because I could see me saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Marie saying 1, 2, 5, 4, 3, and is that really a big difference as opposed to saying, here's the 9 Marie wanted, here's the 9 I wanted here.
Right.
So
it really, I don't think it matters. It's just whatever's easiest for the group.
So unless anybody has any objection, I'd like to suggest that we each put together our top, the 9 yeses, and then rank the others.
Okay. I think that's a good system, and I think in the future, I'd be open to using that. In this case, it's a senior center. The difference between 9 and 11 people isn't that great. And I think that we should just go with 11 because we could have some folks who just, don't make it all the way through the process. And so I don't think we should get rid of anybody.
Yeah.
Just for this one. But it's a good system for the future, I would say.
I was wondering, I don't know, maybe we're giving too much thought to it. We set up 9, and that's what I told Mark. I said, it started by, he basically said, well, they're all qualified. And I said, I agree with you. If they are, why don't we just put them all on? But we had set the committee at 9. The functionality of 11-person committee is the same as it is with 9. You still got a tie break in there.
But we're talking about seniors, and
well, they're not all seniors. They're not all seniors.
Not all of them, but I think a fair amount of them are. I mean, the ones I'd be concerned about would be the seniors who, want to be on it, and then something happens.
The problem is if we set the committee at 11 and somebody drops out, we're going to be requested to fill that spot.
Unless we make 2 alternates, and then.
And you can make them voting alternates if you want to.
Voting alternates, so that if someone doesn't show up at the meeting, the alternate shows up, which is most likely, they'll be able to vote.
Well, the alternates could show up anyway. They just couldn't vote unless they were in a fill-in capacity.
The problem is to make 2 alternates, you got to decide which 2 are the alternates. So
yeah, so we could do the same, but this way everyone gets the chance to at least participate.
I mean, I guess I'm in favor of what you and Tom are saying. I mean, and part of it, quite frankly, is I just, people want to serve, and to, it's sort of like picking a team and say, okay, I want all 9, but you 2 could, get away. I mean, like, that doesn't feel good. And I think they all have something to offer. So why not make it 11? To me, even the alternates, you're kind of setting up a different tier.
So replace them. I don't think that'll be an issue.
Make a motion.
Okay, so I would.
No, technically we can't until the week after we've interviewed the last person.
No, he can technically change the number.
Oh, right. You change the number. We can't appoint anybody.
Yeah.
We can't appoint.
All right, so I'll move to make the number of people on the Adult Center Building Committee be 11.
I'll second it.
Do you have confirmation that's how many we have?
I just made the count. Yeah, I just
did double check it. Because one person dropped off.
We had 10 and then 1 tonight.
10, right.
Okay.
Yeah, because we interviewed before 7, 8, 9, 10, and then today's 11 because I watched the meeting.
I didn't double check it before I left the house, so I didn't get that. Okay, good.
You got that too.
There was a second by Tom. Is there any other discussion on this? We're proposing taking the DPW, saying we can't make appointments, but we're going to take it up to 11 people.
Senior.
The senior center one, up to 11-person team. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Unanimous. Carried. Okay. I don't have anything else. Anybody else have anything that I've missed? It seems to be quiet in the room. I'll go for a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching tonight. I will remind you, we have the town meeting coming up on May 10th. You heard a lot of discussion tonight on how the town meeting may be handled or how it will be handled. So it should be an exciting meeting. We're looking forward to everybody being there. I hope everyone has a nice evening. Good night.